What would you do if you were accused of a crime you didn't commit, but someone you loved did? Samantha Williams stood in the courtroom, her palms sweating and heart racing. The air was thick with tension as the judge's gavel came down with a deafening thud. The jury had just delivered their verdict, and her entire future hung in the balance. She couldn't believe it. She couldn't even fathom how she got here. But it wasn't just the shock of being convicted of a crime she didn't commit, it was the fact that she had decided to take the fall for her sister. Her twin sister, Jasmine. The person who had dragged her into this mess in the first place. The person who had committed the crime. The person who had run away without a second thought, leaving Sam to bear the consequences. Jasmine was always the rebellious one, the one who had no regard for rules, for consequences, for anything. And Sam? Sam was the responsible one, the one who always tried to do the right thing. But in a moment of foolish loyalty and love, she had taken the fall. The crime? Armed robbery. A bank robbery gone wrong. It was supposed to be a simple heist, an easy in and out. But somewhere in the chaos, things escalated. Someone got hurt, and now, Sam was facing a lifetime in prison. She hadn't even done anything wrong. But no one cared. No one cared about the truth. All they cared about was the evidence, the fingerprints that weren't hers, the security footage that made it look like she was the one holding the gun. And to make it worse, Jasmine wasn't even there to testify for her. She was long gone, hiding from the law, while Sam's world was falling apart. As Sam walked back to the holding cell, her mind raced. Why had I done it? She asked herself over and over. Why did I take the blame? The truth was, she didn't even know anymore. It wasn't the first time she'd protected Jasmine. It wasn't the first time she'd made a sacrifice for her sister, the person who meant more to her than anyone else in the world. They had grown up in the same house, the same neighborhood, and they had always been inseparable. Where one went, the other followed. They had an unspoken bond, something deep and unbreakable. Even when their parents had failed them, even when the world turned against them, the two of them had always had each other. But Jasmine wasn't the same person Sam had once known. Jasmine had become someone else entirely. Someone selfish. Someone who would throw anyone, even her own twin, under the bus if it meant protecting herself. Sam sat down on the cold bench in the holding cell and closed her eyes. The cold metal pressed against her back, but she barely felt it. All she could feel was the weight of her decision, the crushing responsibility she had placed on her own shoulders. For Jasmine. Sam, a voice called from behind her. Sam opened her eyes, and there stood Detective Marcus Grant, the one person who still believed in her innocence. Detective Grant had been assigned to the case after the robbery, and unlike the others, he hadn't rushed to judgment. He'd questioned the evidence, asked the hard questions, and even started to doubt that Sam was really the perpetrator. But despite his suspicions, there was nothing concrete to prove her innocence. All the evidence pointed to her. "What's the matter?" he asked, his voice soft. "You don't look surprised." Sam shook her head. "I should be used to this by now. Nothing I do seems to matter." She paused, glancing up at him. "It's all a lie. I didn't do it." Marcus sighed, sitting down beside her. "I know. But the problem is, we don't have any proof to back you up. We're stuck, Sam." She swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "You're telling me there's nothing you can do?" He leaned forward, his eyes filled with determination. "No, that's not what I'm saying. There's always a way out of this, but you have to trust me. You have to tell me what happened that night. You have to tell me everything." Sam closed her eyes, replaying the events in her head. The night had started out like any other. She and Jasmine had been together at their apartment, laughing over takeout, as they often did when things felt normal. But then Jasmine had gotten a phone call. Sam remembered Jasmine's face turning pale, the way she suddenly got up and grabbed her jacket without saying a word. Sam had been too tired to question her. But now, looking back, she knew Jasmine had planned it all along. The robbery. The violence. The escape. Sam had no idea what to do when the police showed up, banging on their door. Jasmine was gone, disappeared without a trace. And Sam, confused and scared, had tried to protect her twin, to protect the only family she had left. Jasmine did it, Sam whispered, her voice barely audible. She's the one who robbed that bank. But I took the fall for her. Detective Grant's eyes widened. You took the fall for her, he repeated, disbelief in his voice. Sam nodded. I thought I could save her. I thought if I just took the blame, everything would be okay. But now everything's falling apart, he said, his voice filled with empathy. Sam, we need to find her. We need to bring her in and make sure the truth comes out. Sam's heart sank. You don't understand. I can't betray her like that. I can't. Marcus stood up, pacing the small cell. But Sam, you're already in prison for a crime you didn't commit. How long do you think you can keep this up? How long before they throw away the key? Sam's eyes were wide with fear. She had no answers, no way out. The walls were closing in on her, and all she could think about was Jasmine. I'm not going to let you rot in here, Sam. But you have to help me. You have to help yourself. Sam closed her eyes tightly. What was she supposed to do? Could she betray her sister to save herself? Could she live with the guilt of exposing Jasmine? She wasn't sure if she could. But one thing was certain, she was running out of time. Find her, detective, Sam whispered. Find her and make sure she pays for what she did. Marcus nodded, his expression grim. I will. But you have to hold on a little longer, okay? We're going to get you out of here. As he left the cell, Sam felt the weight of her decision crushing her chest. She had no idea how it would all end, if it would end in freedom or more pain. But one thing was clear, nothing would ever be the same again. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Samantha, Sam, Williams sat in the small, sterile holding cell, her head resting against the cold concrete wall as the events of the past few weeks replayed in her mind. It felt like she was trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The constant whirring of the fluorescent lights overhead did little to quiet the storm of memories inside her head. As she thought about her current predicament, falsely convicted of a crime she didn't commit, she couldn't help but wonder how things had gotten this far. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She and Jasmine were supposed to have each other's backs forever. They were twins, after all, practically inseparable. But somewhere along the way, things had gone wrong. Growing up in the city's toughest neighborhood, Sam and Jasmine had learned to rely on each other from a young age. Their parents were never around, lost to addiction and their own demons. Sam had been the responsible one, always trying to make sure she and Jasmine were taken care of. But Jasmine, the more rebellious twin, had always pushed the boundaries, often getting them into trouble. Sam could still remember the days when they were kids, before the world had turned on them. They had shared everything, their toys, their secrets, even their dreams of getting out of the rough streets they grew up in. But Sam had always dreamed of doing things the right way. She'd studied hard, worked odd jobs after school, and tried to make a better life for herself. Jasmine, on the other hand, had always found shortcuts, the easy way out. It wasn't that Jasmine was a bad person, she just didn't seem to understand that their choices had consequences. Sam's memories of their childhood were a mix of laughter and pain. They were both raised in a broken home, one where the only love they ever truly felt was the one they had for each other. Jasmine had always been the more impulsive one, the one who didn't think twice before doing something reckless. Sam had always been the stabilizing force in their lives, the one who could hold things together when everything else seemed to be falling apart. As kids, they had been inseparable. Sam would do anything to protect Jasmine. Even when their mother disappeared for days, or when their father came home drunk, Sam would be there to shield Jasmine from the chaos. She would make sure Jasmine stayed safe, that she didn't get involved in things that could hurt her. But Jasmine, as much as she loved Sam, had a way of pushing limits. She didn't care about rules, or right and wrong. All she cared about was freedom, and the thrill of it. Sam knew her sister had always been good at getting what she wanted, even if it meant bending or breaking the rules. While Sam worked hard at school, Jasmine found herself in trouble with the law more times than Sam could count. It wasn't that Jasmine was inherently a bad person. She just had a different perspective on life. To Jasmine, the world was a game, and the rules were meant to be bent. Sam could never understand that. She had always believed in doing things the right way, in playing by the rules. But Sam had always loved her sister, no matter what. She had always believed that one day, Jasmine would grow up and realize the value of hard work, of responsibility. Sam had hoped that, together, they could escape the streets and build a better future. But somewhere along the way, Jasmine had become someone Sam didn't recognize anymore. It wasn't long before their paths began to diverge. While Sam worked tirelessly to earn a scholarship and make something of herself, Jasmine dropped out of school and fell into the wrong crowd. She started running with a gang, getting involved in petty thefts and illegal activities. Sam tried to intervene, tried to show her sister that there was another way, but Jasmine didn't want to hear it. Sam knew that Jasmine was stubborn, but this was different. Jasmine was spiraling, and no matter how hard Sam tried to pull her back, she couldn't. And yet, Sam still loved her. Despite everything, she couldn't abandon her twin. Jasmine had always been her world, and even though their lives were growing apart, Sam still believed in her. She believed that, deep down, Jasmine had a good heart, that maybe one day, she would find her way. But that day never seemed to come. Sam's mind drifted to the summer before the robbery. They had both been living together in a small apartment, struggling to make ends meet. Sam had been working 2 jobs, trying to save up for college, while Jasmine seemed to be drifting further and further away. Then, out of nowhere, Jasmine had shown up one night with a wild look in her eyes, talking about a big score. She had been so excited, so full of energy, that Sam didn't question it at first. Jasmine had a way of pulling her in with her energy, her charisma. "I've got a plan, Sam. This could be our way out," Jasmine had said, her voice full of excitement. "We could get enough money to leave this place behind. We could go anywhere, start fresh." Sam had looked at her, skeptical. She had seen the way Jasmine's eyes glowed when she talked about plans, especially the dangerous kind. But this time, Sam didn't stop her. She didn't argue. Part of her wanted to believe that maybe this time, Jasmine was right. Maybe this time, they could escape the life that had trapped them. And so, when Jasmine had gone off to take care of business, Sam had convinced herself that it would be fine. She had stayed behind, too tired to get involved, too hopeful that things would work out. But it didn't. By the time Sam had realized what Jasmine was really doing, robbing a bank, armed and dangerous, it was too late. The police came knocking on their door, and Sam found herself in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Jasmine was gone. She had disappeared, leaving Sam to face the consequences. Now, as Sam sat in her holding cell, she couldn't stop thinking about how it all had fallen apart. She had been loyal to her sister, as she always had been. But loyalty had cost her everything. Jasmine had taken off, leaving Sam to deal with the mess she'd created. The bond that had once seemed unbreakable now felt like a curse. And Sam couldn't help but wonder, was this really her sister anymore? Or had Jasmine become a stranger? She closed her eyes, taking a shaky breath. The weight of everything was suffocating, but deep down, she knew one thing for sure. The love she had for Jasmine, no matter how toxic it had become, would always be a part of her. And maybe that was the hardest part of all. The months that followed Sam's conviction felt like they dragged on in a haze. Days blurred into one another, and she found herself trapped in a world of monotony, waking up in the cold, sterile holding cell, going through the motions of prison life, and constantly wondering when, or if, she would ever get out. Every day, she thought about Jasmine. She thought about what her sister had done, about the betrayal Sam felt in her bones. But she also thought about the love they had shared growing up, the way they had promised each other they would always be there. Yet, here Sam was, in a prison cell, while Jasmine was nowhere to be found. "Sam," a voice called from the other side of the cell door, pulling her from her thoughts. She looked up to see Detective Marcus Grant standing there, his usual grim expression softened by a hint of concern. Marcus had been the one detective who hadn't given up on her case. The one person who had kept fighting for her innocence, even when all the evidence seemed to point in the wrong direction. He had been persistent in his search for the truth, and Sam couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope whenever he was around. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his voice gentle. Sam shrugged, not really sure how to answer. There was no easy way to explain how it felt to be locked away for a crime you didn't commit, to be betrayed by the one person who was supposed to protect you. "I don't know anymore, Marcus. I just want out of here." He nodded, his eyes dark with frustration. "I get it. I do. And I'm doing everything I can to find Jasmine. But it's hard, she's good at hiding." Sam's heart dropped at the mention of her twin's name. Jasmine had been hiding since the robbery, and Sam hadn't heard from her in months. Not a word. Not a letter. Not a single trace. "I don't even know where to start looking for her," Marcus continued, his voice filled with frustration. "The whole city's looking for her, but she's like a ghost." "I'm sorry, Sam. I really am." "Don't apologize," Sam said quietly, wiping a tear from her cheek. I don't understand. Why would she leave me like this? I took the fall for her, and she's out there somewhere, probably living her life while I'm stuck in here." Marcus sighed deeply, running a hand through his dark hair. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But we can't just give up. I'm telling you, Sam, we'll find her. And we'll get the truth out there. You don't deserve this." Sam shook her head, feeling an overwhelming wave of sadness wash over her. "But what if she never comes back? What if she just abandons me? What if I spend the rest of my life in here for something I didn't do, and she never faces any consequences?" The words stung more than she expected, and Sam felt a fresh wave of anger bubbling up inside her. The injustice of it all was suffocating. Jasmine had been the one to commit the crime, and yet it was Sam who was paying the price. "We'll figure this out," Marcus said, his voice firm, though there was an underlying note of doubt. "I won't stop looking for her. I promise." Sam wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that somehow, someway, this nightmare would end, and she would be free. But a part of her knew the truth: she couldn't wait around forever, hoping that Jasmine would somehow come back and fix everything. If she wanted to get out of prison, she needed to take matters into her own hands. "Sam, I'm not giving up on you," Marcus said, his voice filled with determination. "But I need you to do something for me. We have a lead, a potential way to trace where Jasmine might have gone. We can't do this alone." Sam's brow furrowed. "What do you mean? What do you want me to do?" "I need you to talk to me. I need you to tell me everything, everything about what happened that night, about where Jasmine could be hiding, about who she might have gone to. Any detail, anything you think could help, could make a difference." Sam sat back against the cold metal bench, staring at him. Her heart pounded in her chest as the weight of his request sank in. She had kept so much from Marcus, not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear that betraying her sister's trust would make everything worse, fear that exposing Jasmine would mean tearing apart the last bit of family she had left. But now, as she looked into Marcus's eyes, filled with the same sense of urgency she felt inside. She knew she had no choice. She had to tell him everything, even if it meant losing her sister forever. "Okay," Sam said softly. "I'll tell you everything. But you have to promise me one thing." Marcus raised an eyebrow, curiosity written across his face. "What's that?" "You have to bring her back. You have to make sure she pays for what she did." Marcus nodded solemnly, his expression hardening. "I promise. But first, we need to start from the beginning." Sam took a deep breath and began recounting everything. She told him about the night of the robbery, about Jasmine's sudden disappearance, about the people Jasmine had been involved with. She told him about the dangerous crowd Jasmine had fallen in with and the rumors she had heard about a bigger scheme that Jasmine might have gotten involved in. As Sam spoke, she could feel the burden of her silence lifting, but it was replaced by the weight of something else, the guilt of betraying her sister, the sister she had always loved unconditionally, the sister who had stolen everything from her. Once Sam finished speaking, Marcus took a moment to digest the information. His expression was unreadable, but Sam could see the wheels turning in his head. "This is a good lead. It's not much, but it's something. We'll start there." Sam nodded, but inside, she felt a storm brewing. She had just given Marcus everything he needed to track down her sister, and now, she had no idea what to expect. Would Jasmine try to run again? Would she finally face the consequences of her actions? Sam didn't know. But what she did know was that her life was about to change forever. And there was no going back. The days that followed Sam's decision to cooperate with Detective Marcus Grant were filled with a growing sense of anticipation. Each morning, she woke up to the same grim reality, but this time there was a faint spark of hope deep inside her. She had made a choice, and now she had to see it through. Marcus was relentless in his search for Jasmine. Sam could see the determination in his eyes every time he visited. He combed through every lead, every scrap of information Sam had given him, and although it was slow going, there was a glimmer of progress. Sam's mind raced with a mix of hope and fear, hope that they would find Jasmine and bring her to justice, but also fear of what might happen when they did. Would Jasmine resist? Would she come back, ashamed and broken, or would she lash out, forever gone from Sam's life? It was a tough balancing act. Sam had learned to expect the unexpected, especially when it came to her sister, but now it felt different. Jasmine wasn't just some rebellious teenager causing trouble anymore. She was a fugitive. A criminal on the run. And Sam had been the one to help put the pieces together for Marcus to find her. The first breakthrough came on a quiet Tuesday morning, a few weeks after Sam's last conversation with Marcus. He arrived at the prison with an urgent look in his eyes, holding a manila envelope. "I've got something," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sam's heart pounded in her chest as she sat up straighter on the bench. "What is it? Is it about Jasmine?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He just handed her the envelope. "Take a look." With trembling hands, Sam opened the envelope and pulled out a set of photos. There, in grainy black and white shots, were images of Jasmine, the familiar glint of mischief in her eyes, the wild curls that Sam had always loved to tug at. But these photos were different. They were taken from security footage, showing Jasmine in the parking lot of a rundown motel on the outskirts of the city. "She's been staying there," Marcus said, his tone serious. "For the last few weeks. We've got a tip from a motel clerk. She's been in and out, but she hasn't left for good. We think she's hiding out, trying to lay low." Sam stared at the pictures, her mind spinning. This was the first real lead in months. Jasmine hadn't disappeared forever. She was still close. But Sam couldn't shake the feeling of dread that gripped her chest. Jasmine was out there, and she was probably more dangerous than ever. "Marcus, I don't know if I'm ready for this," Sam said, her voice trembling. "What if she's changed? What if she doesn't even recognize me anymore?" Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder, offering a small, reassuring smile. "You're not going in alone. We'll do this together. But you need to be prepared. Jasmine might not be the same person you remember." Sam nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. She couldn't avoid the truth. Jasmine had gone down a dark path, and there was no going back. The Jasmine Sam once knew, the one she could talk to about anything, the one who had shared everything with her, was no longer the same girl. But Sam had no choice now. She had to face her, for better or for worse. The drive to the motel felt like 100 years. Sam sat in the passenger seat of Marcus's unmarked police car, her hands folded tightly in her lap, staring out the window as the city passed by in a blur. The closer they got to their destination, the more the fear inside her grew. What was she going to say to Jasmine? Was her sister even still the same person she remembered? Was she still the girl who used to laugh with Sam at night, sharing secrets under the stars? "Do you think she'll try to run again?" Sam asked, breaking the silence. Marcus's grip on the steering wheel tightened, and his eyes flicked to her briefly. "If she's still the same Jasmine, yeah. She's not one to face the music. She's been hiding for this long, who knows what she's willing to do to stay out of jail." Sam shivered at the thought. Jasmine wasn't a criminal by nature. She was impulsive, reckless, but Sam never thought she would be capable of something like this. And yet, here they were, chasing her down like a fugitive. Jasmine had made her choices, and Sam had no choice but to face them. When they finally arrived at the motel, the first thing Sam noticed was the heavy tension in the air. It was a run-down, seedy place, the kind of motel that attracted the wrong sort of people. A couple of junked cars sat in the parking lot, and the flickering neon sign overhead did little to brighten the dim space. Marcus pulled the car into a spot, his headlights illuminating the dilapidated exterior of the building. They sat there for a few moments in silence, the weight of the situation pressing down on both of them. Sam could feel the sweat forming on the back of her neck as she struggled to steady her breathing. This was it. They were about to face Jasmine, and she didn't know what would happen next. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked, looking over at her. "I don't know," Sam admitted. "But I have to be. For her. For me. I can't keep hiding from this." Marcus nodded and opened his door, stepping out onto the cracked pavement. Sam followed him, her legs heavy as she moved toward the motel office with him. The door creaked open, and an elderly woman behind the counter eyed them suspiciously. Marcus flashed his badge. "We're looking for someone." A woman, about 5'5", long dark hair. "Been staying here for a while," he said. The woman squinted at them, then nodded slowly. "Room 12. But she's not here right now. Came by this morning, then left again. Got a bag with her. Maybe she's on the run again." Sam's heart sank. "She left again?" The woman shrugged, clearly uninterested. "That's all I know." Marcus turned to Sam, his expression unreadable. "We need to check that room. It might hold some clues." They approached the door to room 12 with caution, the silence between them thick with uncertainty. Sam's mind raced as they moved forward. Was Jasmine inside? Or had she managed to slip away again? The door creaked as Marcus tried the handle, finding it unlocked. The room was empty, but it wasn't abandoned. A few personal items remained, a worn-out hoodie tossed carelessly on the bed, a half-drunk cup of coffee on the nightstand. It was a haunting reminder of just how close Sam had come to finding her sister. But there was something else. As Marcus stepped further into the room, he spotted a small envelope tucked under the pillow. Sam's hands shook as she reached for it, tearing it open. Inside was a note. "I'm sorry, Sam. I didn't want this. But I had to run. I'll be back. I promise. You'll know where to find me when the time is right." Sam's heart stopped. Jasmine had written it. She had known all along what was going on. But now, now she had disappeared again. "Marcus, she left me a message," Sam said, her voice shaky. Marcus looked over her shoulder at the note. He let out a heavy sigh. "This isn't over yet. She's out there. And we'll find her." The note from Jasmine clung to Sam's mind like a constant buzz, an irritating hum she couldn't shake. "I'll be back. I promise. You'll know where to find me when the time is right." Every time she closed her eyes, the words burned into her thoughts. Jasmine hadn't abandoned her completely. There was still hope. Still a thread to pull on. But Sam couldn't ignore the truth either. Jasmine was running. And there was a part of Sam that wondered if her sister would ever come back, or if she was simply too far gone. Could Jasmine still be saved? Or had the girl she once knew become someone else, someone who didn't care about family, about loyalty, about love? Sam. Marcus's voice pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. She realized she had been standing in the motel room, staring at the note for far too long. "Sorry," Sam said quickly, folding the note in half and stuffing it into the back pocket of her jeans. "What now?" Marcus was pacing, thinking through their options. "We need to figure out where she's going next. She's been in and out of this place for weeks. The clerk said she left this morning. We need to know who she's been in contact with. If we can trace her steps, we might be able to catch up with her before she disappears again." Sam swallowed hard. "But where do we even start? All we have is a motel room, a few belongings, and a note that doesn't give us much." Marcus turned back to her with a determined look. "We start with what we know. Her behavior, her connections, they're all clues. We'll go back to the people who might be able to help us. The ones who know Jasmine best." Sam's stomach twisted. There was one name that came to her mind immediately. Corey, Jasmine's old boyfriend. He had been part of their lives for years, a constant shadow in their relationship. But Corey was trouble. He always had been. He ran in a world full of bad decisions, and he was the kind of guy who disappeared the minute things started to get messy. But if anyone could lead them to Jasmine, it would be him. "I'll call him," Sam said reluctantly, pulling her phone from her pocket. The idea of reaching out to Corey made her skin crawl, but if it meant finding Jasmine, she would do it. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked, his voice laced with concern. "Corey's trouble, Sam. I don't want you getting too close to him." "I don't have a choice," Sam snapped, the frustration bubbling to the surface. "He's the only one who might know where Jasmine went. If I want to find her, I have to try." Marcus sighed, clearly torn. "All right. Just, be careful." Sam nodded, already dialing Corey's number. It rang for what felt like an eternity before his voice finally came through on the other end. "Sam. What the hell do you want?" Corey's tone was rough, the kind of voice that made it clear he didn't have time for small talk. "I need to find Jasmine," Sam said quickly, cutting straight to the point. "She's in trouble, and I think you might know where she is." There was a long pause on the other end, and for a moment, Sam thought he was going to hang up. But then Corey spoke again, his voice quieter now. "She's not my problem anymore, Sam. You need to leave her to deal with her mess." Sam's heart sank. "What do you mean, she's not your problem?" "She's in danger, Corey. You owe her something. You owe me something. You've been in her life for years. Don't act like you don't know where she is." Corey was silent for a moment, and Sam could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and hesitant. "I don't know where she is right now. But I know who does. Tony." Sam froze. Tony. Of course. Jasmine had been involved with him before, long before everything had gone south. Tony was a local dealer with ties to people far more dangerous than anyone Sam could imagine. He was the kind of guy you didn't cross, not unless you were ready to pay the price. Where is he? Sam asked, her pulse racing. She knew this was the kind of lead that could take her down a dangerous road. But it was the only lead she had. I'll text you the address, Corey replied, his voice almost too casual now. But don't say I didn't warn you. Sam hung up and turned to Marcus. Tony. We need to find him. Marcus's face darkened. Tony. Damn, Sam. He's bad news. Are you sure about this? Getting tangled with him could make things worse. I don't have a choice, Sam replied, the weight of the situation bearing down on her. If Tony knows where Jasmine is, I have to go. It's the only chance I've got. The drive to Tony's address was unlike any other. The city's streets seemed darker, more oppressive, as if the very air had thickened with danger. Sam sat in the passenger seat, her hands gripped tightly around the handle, her mind racing. This was it. They were about to dive headfirst into a world of danger, a world where Jasmine had been swallowed up, and where Sam might not come out the other side unscathed. Marcus parked a few blocks away from Tony's location, his eyes scanning the area. This place is sketchy, he muttered. Stay close. They both stepped out of the car, moving cautiously toward a nondescript building at the end of the block. Sam's heart was hammering in her chest as they neared the entrance, a run-down warehouse with a rusty steel door. The low hum of music and muffled voices drifted out from behind it. Tony's hideout. I'm going in, Marcus said quietly. You stay here. Sam's gut twisted. No. I'm coming with you. Sam, this is dangerous. You don't know what you're walking into, Marcus warned. I'm not letting you do this alone, Sam insisted. She wasn't going to be left out of the most important moment of her life. Not now. Marcus gave her a long look, clearly seeing the determination in her eyes. With a resigned sigh, he nodded. All right. But stick close. And don't do anything stupid. Together, they pushed through the door, stepping into the dimly lit warehouse. The air was thick with smoke and the stench of alcohol. The rough crowd inside barely glanced at them as they made their way toward the back, where Tony was known to hold court. Sam's heart raced as they moved deeper into the space, each step feeling heavier than the last. And then, in the back corner, they saw him. Tony. The man was leaning against a wall, his eyes cold and calculating as he surveyed the room. He looked up when they approached, his lips curling into a slow smile. Well, well. If it isn't the sisters, Tony said, his voice dripping with contempt. I was wondering when you'd come around. The moment Tony's cold eyes locked onto Sam, the air in the room seemed to grow heavier, charged with a tension that made it hard to breathe. His casual stance didn't fool Sam for a second. Behind that slow smile, she knew there was a man capable of unspeakable things. He had been Jasmine's connection to a darker world, and now he was standing in front of her, the key to unraveling the mystery of where her sister had gone. Marcus stayed quiet beside her, his posture tense, his hand resting just inches away from his gun. Sam could sense he was ready for any threat Tony might pose, but she needed information. And to get it, she had to push past her fear. I'm looking for Jasmine, Sam said, her voice steady but urgent. I know you know where she is. Tony raised an eyebrow, amusement dancing in his eyes. So, you've come to me for help, huh? You know, last time I saw your sister, she wasn't exactly in a hurry to come back to you. Sam's stomach turned at the implication. Tony had always had a way of twisting the truth, of making people doubt their own instincts. But Sam couldn't afford to be swayed. Not now. Not when the truth was so close, so fragile. She's in trouble, Sam pressed, ignoring the uneasy feeling twisting inside her. I need to find her. You know what she's gotten herself into. Tell me where she is. Tony smirked, glancing over at Marcus for a moment. The silent exchange between them only deepened the tension. I don't know if I should just hand over that information, Tony said slowly. Your sister's a big girl. She's made her choices. If she wanted you to find her, she would have come back to you herself. Don't do this, Tony, Sam said, her voice hardening. She's your business partner. Don't pretend like you don't know where she is. Marcus shifted behind Sam, his voice breaking in. You're not in a position to make demands, Tony. But we're here to help Jasmine. Not to threaten her. He gave Sam a quick, unreadable glance. But if you don't want to cooperate, we'll find another way. Tony's gaze flicked to Marcus, then back to Sam. There was a moment of silence, the kind where decisions were made, the kind that shifted fates in the blink of an eye. Sam's heart beat faster, her grip tightening on her phone, ready for any sudden move. Finally, Tony exhaled a long breath. All right, he said, raising his hands in mock surrender. I know where she is, but I'm not going to just hand her over. You've got to pay the price. Sam froze. What price? Her voice was barely a whisper. Tony leaned in slightly, his voice lowering to a dangerous level. You've been living in a dream, Sam. Your sister, she's in deep. Real deep. You can't just waltz in and take her back like nothing happened. I don't care what happened, Sam shot back, desperate. I want her back. I don't care what you ask for. A dangerous grin spread across Tony's face, his teeth flashing in the dim light. I'll tell you where she is, but you're going to have to do something for me first. Sam's stomach churned with dread, but she kept her voice steady. What do you want? Tony looked her up and down, sizing her up with a look that made her skin crawl. It's simple, he said, his voice almost too casual. I need you to make a delivery for me. Just a little favor. You do that, and I'll tell you where Jasmine is. Marcus's hand clenched at his side. Sam could see the anger in his eyes, but he held back, letting her take control of the situation. He didn't trust Tony, and neither did Sam, but she couldn't afford to refuse. Not now. What kind of delivery? Sam asked, forcing herself to sound calm. Tony's grin widened. A little package. You take it to a place for me, hand it over to the right person, and when you're done, I'll tell you where Jasmine is. Simple as that. Marcus stepped forward slightly. You expect her to do your dirty work, Tony. This is a setup. Tony held up a hand, cutting him off. No tricks, I promise. Just do this one thing, and you'll get what you want. Jasmine's life isn't a game, Sam. She's mixed up in something dangerous. If you want to get her out, you'll have to deal with the consequences. Sam's heart pounded in her chest. She wasn't sure what kind of package Tony was talking about, but one thing was certain, she had no choice. She had to agree to this. For Jasmine. For her sister. I'll do it, Sam said, swallowing hard. Where do I take it? Tony reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, nondescript black bag. He tossed it onto the table between them. Take it to a guy named Nico. He'll be waiting for you at the corner of 5th and Maple, down by the old pawn shop. He's got the rest of the information you need. Sam nodded, swallowing her nerves. And Jasmine? After I do this, you'll tell me where she is? Tony leaned back, giving a lazy shrug. That's the deal, Sam. But don't take too long. Time's running out for your sister. The ride to the corner of 5th and Maple was torturously quiet. Sam couldn't help but replay the conversation over and over again in her head. She was about to make a dangerous deal with someone who thrived on chaos. But she couldn't afford to think too much. Every second counted. Marcus drove them through the dimly lit streets, and the closer they got to the location, the more Sam could feel the tension mounting. There was something off about all of this. Tony had made it clear that Jasmine was in over her head, and that they weren't just up against a couple of small-time criminals. Whoever Nico was, he was part of a much bigger network. Marcus parked a few blocks away from the pawn shop. He turned to Sam, his expression grim. "I don't like this, Sam. But I'm not going to let you do this alone. If something goes wrong, we'll be ready." Sam nodded, her breath shaky. "Thanks. But I have to do this. For Jasmine." They got out of the car and started walking toward the corner. The streets were eerily quiet, the only sound the distant hum of traffic. As they turned the corner onto Maple, Sam's eyes immediately locked onto a shadowy figure standing near the entrance to the pawn shop. The man was tall, his face obscured by the hood of his jacket, but Sam had a feeling it was Nico. "This is it," Sam whispered to Marcus, her voice tight. Marcus gave a small nod. "Stay close." Sam took a deep breath and walked toward the figure. As she approached, the man's head lifted, and their eyes met. He didn't smile or greet them, he simply held out his hand. "You got the package?" Nico's voice was low and steady. Sam hesitated for a split second, then handed him the black bag. "Here. Tony sent me." Nico didn't waste any time. He took the bag and nodded. "You've done your part. Now, as promised, Tony didn't send you here just for fun." He pulled out a small envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to Sam. She took it, her hands trembling slightly as she opened it. Inside was a single slip of paper with an address scrawled in hurried handwriting. "Is this where Jasmine is?" Sam asked, her heart pounding. Nico nodded. "That's where she's been hiding. You'd better hurry." Sam felt a wave of relief wash over her, but it was quickly replaced by a sharp, burning fear. She had the address. But what was waiting for her there? The address that Nico had handed Sam burned in her palm like a searing brand. She had the information she'd been chasing for so long, but now that she was so close to finding her sister, the reality of what was to come felt more terrifying than anything she had imagined. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but each new discovery only revealed darker and more dangerous connections. "Stay sharp," Marcus said, his voice cutting through Sam's swirling thoughts. "I don't trust this. We don't know what's waiting for us when we get there." Sam nodded, clutching the small envelope with the address tighter. The anticipation mixed with dread in her stomach, a knot she couldn't shake. As they walked back to the car, the quietness of the streets seemed to close in on them. The lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows that made the world feel eerily empty. They didn't speak much during the drive. The steady hum of the engine was the only sound that filled the space between them. Sam kept staring at the address, memorizing the street name, the number. It was a rundown area on the outskirts of the city, a place that seemed to exist on the edge of society, a perfect hiding spot for someone like Jasmine, someone who had fallen off the grid and disappeared from everyone's sight. "We'll get through this," Marcus said quietly, his eyes focused on the road ahead. "We'll find her." Sam turned toward him, meeting his gaze for a brief moment. There was a comfort in his presence, even though the weight of the situation hung over them both like a storm cloud. He wasn't just her protector, he was her anchor in this storm. Still, the fear in her chest refused to subside. What if they weren't in time? What if Jasmine had already gone too far? As the car pulled up to the address, Sam's heart rate quickened. The area was exactly as she had imagined, a dimly lit street lined with old, dilapidated buildings. The kind of place where people went to disappear, where the echoes of the past were swallowed by the present. A faint, musty smell clung to the air, and the sound of distant traffic was the only indication that the world hadn't completely forgotten about this part of the city. The building she was looking for was a nondescript brick structure at the end of the street. Its windows were boarded up, and the front door was partially ajar, as if it had been abandoned long ago. Sam couldn't shake the feeling that the place was hiding something sinister, but she couldn't turn back now. Marcus parked the car a little ways down the street, his eyes scanning the area. "Keep your guard up. Don't trust anyone here." "I won't," Sam replied, her voice tight with determination. Together, they stepped out of the car, the air around them heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. As they walked toward the building, Sam's every step felt like a leap into the unknown. She had no idea what was waiting for her inside, but she knew one thing for certain: it was do or die. The closer they got, the more Sam's instincts screamed at her. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. The silence around them felt unnatural, like the calm before a storm. Marcus noticed it too. He stopped walking for a moment, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the area. "Wait here," he said, his voice low and urgent. "I'll check it out." "No," Sam snapped, grabbing his arm. "I'm going with you. I'm not letting you face whatever's in there alone." Marcus hesitated for a moment, then gave her a curt nod. "All right. But stick close." They approached the building cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the worn concrete beneath their feet. Sam's heart was pounding so loudly she thought Marcus could hear it. The door creaked as they pushed it open, revealing a dark hallway that stretched into the gloom. The only sound was the distant drip of water from a leaky pipe somewhere overhead. The smell inside was worse, stale air mixed with the faint scent of mold and something metallic. It was clear no one had lived here for a long time, but the feeling of being watched was inescapable. Sam's breath quickened, her senses on high alert. "Stay quiet," Marcus murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "We don't know who's inside." They crept down the hallway, every footstep a potential warning. As they turned the corner, Sam spotted a faint light coming from under a door at the end of the hall. Her pulse raced. This had to be it. This was where Jasmine was, her sister was just beyond that door. Marcus held up his hand, signaling for Sam to stop. He pulled out his gun, checked the chamber, and gave her one last glance. "Ready?" Sam nodded, though her heart was in her throat. They had come too far to back out now. Marcus pushed the door open slowly, and they stepped into the room. The space was sparse, dimly lit by a single hanging bulb that swayed slightly in the air. In the center of the room was a metal table, scattered with papers and objects Sam couldn't quite make out. But there was no sign of Jasmine. "Where is she?" Sam's voice cracked, panic rising in her chest. Before Marcus could answer, a voice echoed from the shadows. "She's not here." Sam froze. Her blood ran cold as she turned toward the voice. Standing in the doorway was none other than Corey, her sister's ex-boyfriend. The last person she wanted to see. "What are you doing here?" Sam demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. Corey's lips curled into a smirk, his expression unreadable. "I could ask you the same thing, Sam. But I'm guessing you came looking for Jasmine. Where is she?" Sam repeated, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "What's going on, Corey?" Corey stepped into the room, his hands in his pockets as if he didn't have a care in the world. "You think it's that simple? Jasmine's not some lost puppy you can just find and take home. I don't care about the games, Corey. Just tell me where she is." Sam's patience was wearing thin. She had gone through hell to get here, and she wasn't about to let him play with her emotions. Corey's smirk faded, and for the first time, there was a hint of seriousness in his eyes. "She's gone, Sam. She's not here, and she's not coming back. Not the way you want her to, anyway." The words hit Sam like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean she's gone? What happened to her?" Corey's gaze darkened. "She's mixed up with people who aren't going to let her walk away. They're using her, Sam. She got in over her head. I tried to help her, but she's too far gone now." Sam's mind raced. Using her? Who was they? And why hadn't Jasmine reached out to her for help? "You're lying," Sam hissed, but deep down, a sinking feeling told her that Corey wasn't lying. Jasmine's disappearance wasn't a random act. It was part of something much bigger, something she didn't understand. "I wish I was," Corey said quietly. But I can't protect her anymore. And neither can you. Sam's pulse raced as Corey's words echoed in her ears. She could barely comprehend the gravity of what he had just said. Jasmine is too far gone. Those words, so simple, so cold, felt like a knife cutting through her chest. Sam's grip tightened around a small envelope containing the address Nico had given her, as though she could will her sister's safety back into existence by sheer force of will. Stop lying, Sam snapped, her voice raw with desperation. You're trying to protect her, but I know you know where she is. Just tell me. Corey shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting around the room as if seeking an escape. His demeanor was colder than Sam had ever seen it, and for the first time, she wondered if he was telling the truth. Was Jasmine truly caught up in something so dangerous that she couldn't just walk away? Sam, you don't get it, Corey said slowly, his voice distant. Jasmine's made choices that put her into the hands of people who won't let her go. And no matter how much you want to save her, there's no saving someone who doesn't want to be saved. You're wrong, Sam fired back, the words leaving her mouth with force. Jasmine wouldn't just give up. She wouldn't throw everything away. Corey's face hardened as he stepped closer. She already has, Sam. She didn't just fall into the wrong crowd. She's part of it. She's been working for them, doing their bidding. And now they control her. The air in the room grew heavier with every passing second. Sam's mind spun, trying to piece together the truth of what Corey was saying. It didn't make sense. Her sister wasn't like that. Jasmine wouldn't sell herself out. But the doubt gnawed at her, an uncomfortable feeling in her gut. Could it be true? Had Jasmine really gotten involved in something so far out of her depth that she couldn't escape it? Sam refused to believe it. She wouldn't. Where is she, Corey? Sam asked again, the urgency in her voice undeniable. I don't care about your excuses. Tell me where she is. For a long moment, Corey didn't say anything. He just stared at her, as if weighing something in his mind. Then, slowly, he sighed. I'm not the one who can give you answers. You're going to have to talk to them. His eyes flicked to the shadows at the far corner of the room. Them? Sam repeated, confusion flooding her. Who's them? People who own this city, Sam, Corey said quietly, his eyes now filled with something like regret, as though he had just revealed a secret he couldn't take back. The ones who pull the strings from behind the scenes. You think you're just dealing with street criminals? You have no idea. They're part of something much bigger. And if you think you can waltz in and fix this, you're wrong. Sam's head swam with the weight of his words. Are you saying my sister's involved with some kind of cartel? Her voice faltered as she said it out loud, the absurdity of it almost too much to comprehend. Corey didn't deny it. I'm not saying it's a cartel, but it's bigger than that. A whole network of people who've got their hands in everything. Money, power, drugs. They own the streets, Sam. They run things. And Jasmine? She's their pawn. Sam's hands shook as she clenched them into fists, trying to hold herself together. Her mind was racing, processing everything Corey was saying, but none of it felt real. Jasmine, a pawn. The sister she knew, the one who had always been so fiercely independent, couldn't possibly have fallen this far. But the look in Corey's eyes, the hesitancy in his voice, made her realize something else. Corey wasn't lying. He was scared. He was telling her what he knew, because he had no other choice. Where do I find them? Sam's voice was quieter now, more resigned. Tell me. I'll do whatever it takes. Corey shook his head, a wry, bitter smile on his lips. You're not listening. You don't get it. These people don't care about you. They don't care about Jasmine. They'll use you just like they used her, and then they'll toss you aside like you're nothing. You'll be in way over your head, Sam. And by the time you realize that, it'll be too late. You're wrong, Sam said, her voice filled with finality. I'm not giving up. Not on Jasmine. I'll find her, Corey. And when I do, I'll bring her home. Corey's expression softened for a split second, a flicker of regret crossing his face. But just as quickly, it disappeared, replaced by the hardened mask he had been wearing all along. You're making a huge mistake, he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. But I'm not going to stop you. He stepped back, pulling something from his pocket. It was a small, crumpled piece of paper. Take this. It's the name of a guy who might be able to help you. But don't expect him to give you anything easy. He's just like the rest of them. Sam took the paper, barely looking at it. She was too focused on the task at hand, on the single mission that had consumed her mind since the moment her sister disappeared, find Jasmine. Without saying another word, Sam turned and walked out of the room. Marcus was waiting for her, his face serious. He hadn't heard much of the conversation, but he could read the tension in her posture. What did he say? Marcus asked, his voice low. He's telling the truth, Sam replied, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. Jasmine's mixed up in something much bigger than we thought. Something dangerous. Marcus's jaw tightened. We've got to move fast. I don't care what's waiting for us. We'll get her back. Sam nodded, determined. Her heart was heavy, but it was also burning with an urgency she had never felt before. She couldn't lose Jasmine. Not like this. The drive to the address Corey had given her was filled with silence, broken only by the soft hum of the engine and the occasional sound of tires against the road. Sam's mind raced, running through everything she had just learned. The sheer weight of what lay ahead felt almost suffocating. The building they arrived at was tucked away in a part of the city that Sam hadn't ventured to before. It was a secluded warehouse, abandoned-looking, with rusted metal doors and boarded-up windows. There was no sign of life, no indication of any activity. Marcus parked a little further down the street, and they got out of the car, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. Sam's heart pounded in her chest as they approached the building. This is it, Sam said, her voice barely above a whisper. This is where they're hiding Jasmine. Marcus looked at her, his expression unreadable. Whatever happens next, we're in this together. You're not going through this alone. Sam nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. This was it. There was no turning back now. As they reached the front door, it swung open unexpectedly, revealing a tall man with a grim expression. He looked like he had been waiting for them, and Sam's stomach dropped. Come in, he said flatly. You're expected. The door creaked as it swung open, and Sam's breath caught in her throat. The man standing there was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore a cold expression that sent a chill down her spine. His eyes were dark and unreadable, as though he had seen too much of the world to still feel anything. He stepped aside, motioning for Sam and Marcus to enter. Come in, he said, his voice low and gravelly. You're expected. Sam hesitated for only a moment before stepping inside. The room beyond was dimly lit, with shadows clinging to every corner. The air was thick with the scent of dust and something metallic, like blood. The space was an industrial wasteland, old machinery lining the walls, abandoned crates stacked haphazardly in the corners. The flickering lights overhead cast eerie shadows across the floor, making it hard to tell whether the building had once been a factory, a warehouse, or something else entirely. Sam couldn't shake the feeling that she had just stepped into a world she didn't belong in, a world that had no place for someone like her. The man closed the door behind them, the sound of it locking with an unsettling finality. He didn't offer them a seat or any kind of hospitality. Instead, he simply motioned to the far side of the room, where another figure was standing with his back to them. This person, too, was a stranger, someone Sam had never seen before. The figure turned slowly, revealing a lean face, sharp features, and cold, calculating eyes. His gaze immediately locked with Sam's, and there was no warmth, no recognition, just a chilling indifference. Who are you? Sam demanded, her voice steady despite the unease crawling under her skin. The man didn't answer immediately. He merely regarded her for a moment, his eyes scanning her from head to toe, as if evaluating her worth or assessing the threat she posed. After what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "You're here for your sister," he said, his voice like steel. "I know why you're here. But I'll tell you this now, there's no easy way out of this." Sam's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment she had been preparing for, the moment she had been racing toward since the day Jasmine disappeared. "Where is she?" Sam's voice was sharp, demanding. She couldn't afford to waste any more time on cryptic answers. The man raised a single eyebrow, as if amused by her impatience. "We know where she is. But you'll have to do something for us first." A tight knot of anger twisted in Sam's chest. "I'm not here to make deals. I'm here to get my sister." The man nodded slowly, almost as if he had anticipated her reaction. "I'm afraid that's not how things work around here. You want your sister? Then you'll have to play by our rules." Sam's fists clenched at her sides. "And what exactly are your rules?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he motioned for the large man who had let them in to step forward. The man approached slowly, his hands in his pockets, exuding a sense of menace that made Sam's heart pound harder in her chest. "Take a seat," the man said calmly, his eyes still locked on Sam. "This will be much easier for you if you just listen." Sam refused to sit. She wasn't here to negotiate. She wasn't here to play their games. "I'll stand, thanks. Now, tell me what I have to do to get Jasmine." The man's eyes flicked to Marcus, then back to Sam. There was a glint of something in his gaze, amusement, perhaps, or maybe disdain. But he didn't seem surprised by Sam's defiance. "You're in a dangerous place, little girl," he said, his voice suddenly laced with a cold threat. "You think you can just walk in here, demand answers, and leave with your sister? It doesn't work like that. People who think they can take on the world end up crushed under it. Do you want that for your sister?" Sam's throat tightened, the fear threatening to choke her, but she pushed it down. She couldn't afford fear. Not now. Not when Jasmine needed her. "Tell me what I have to do," Sam said again, her voice harder this time. "Or I'll leave and burn this whole place to the ground." The man didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped toward her, his demeanor almost casual. "You're a tough one, I'll give you that. All right, fine. You want your sister. We can help you find her, but it won't be free. You'll owe us something." Sam's pulse raced. She had expected this, expected the price they would demand, but it didn't make it any easier to stomach. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man's lips curled into a cruel smile. "We need a job done. Someone's crossing us. Someone who thinks they're untouchable. We need you to take care of them." Sam froze. "You want me to kill someone?" The man nodded slowly, his eyes dark and unwavering. "That's the deal. Do this, and we'll give you the information you need to find your sister." Sam's mind raced. She couldn't let herself be swayed. She couldn't compromise her morals just to get Jasmine back. But as the reality of her situation sank in, she realized just how deep into this world she was. There were no easy answers. There were no clean breaks. If she wanted to find Jasmine, she might have to do things she never thought herself capable of. For a moment, she glanced at Marcus, searching for some sign that he had an answer, some way out of this hellhole. But Marcus's face was grim. He didn't have an answer, either. "Not yet. I don't know who you think I am," Sam said, her voice shaking slightly, "but I'm not some hired gun. I'm not a killer." The man chuckled, a low, mocking sound. "Oh, you will be. Or you'll get yourself killed trying." Sam's mind spun. Her entire body screamed at her to walk away, to turn around and never look back. But she couldn't. She couldn't leave without Jasmine. "You'll have to do it, Sam," Marcus said quietly, his eyes meeting hers. "You said you'd do anything to get her back. This is the price." Sam swallowed hard. She was standing at the edge of something far darker than she could have ever imagined. The road ahead was treacherous, and she had no way of knowing if she could come out of it the same person she had been when she started. But there was no going back. Not now. "I'll do it," Sam said finally, her voice steady but hollow. "I'll do whatever it takes." The man's smile widened. "Good. We'll be in touch." The cold, industrial air of the warehouse still lingered as Sam and Marcus stepped back into the dimly lit streets, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. The deal had been made, and now they were on their way to fulfill it. But despite the urgency gnawing at her, Sam felt something deeper creeping in, dread. She had agreed to take someone's life. Her mind kept circling back to that moment, the cold indifference in the man's eyes, the casual way he had handed her the task. It was as if people like her didn't matter. She was just another pawn in their twisted game, and in order to get her sister back, she had to play by their rules. Marcus walked beside her, silent. His face was hard, unreadable, and Sam knew better than to ask what he thought. His resolve had always been one of the things she admired most about him, but right now, she could feel his internal struggle too. He wasn't comfortable with this. Neither of them was. "Who are we going after?" Sam asked quietly, breaking the silence. Marcus didn't answer immediately, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. He had been quiet ever since they left the warehouse, and Sam couldn't tell if he was brooding or just lost in thought. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "We don't know much yet," he said, his voice low, "but I think it's a man named Dominic Wells. He's a supplier, a middleman who deals with some pretty dangerous people. Word is, he's been stepping out of line, trying to muscle in on territory that doesn't belong to him. The people we're dealing with, they don't take kindly to betrayal. And apparently, Wells thinks he's untouchable." Sam's heart dropped at the mention of the name. She'd heard of Dominic Wells. He was known in the city, but not for good reasons. He was one of the more ruthless players in the underworld, a man who could make your life hell if you crossed him. Sam had never imagined she would be asked to take someone like him down. "I can't just kill him," Sam muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. The thought of taking someone's life felt alien to her. She wasn't a killer. Marcus didn't respond right away, and Sam could feel the weight of his words hanging in the air. She glanced at him, her heart heavy, and he met her eyes briefly before looking away. "I don't think you want to," Marcus said quietly. "But sometimes, it's not about what we want. It's about what we have to do to survive. You made a promise, Sam. A promise to bring Jasmine back." Sam clenched her fists, trying to steady herself. Her heart raced, each beat louder than the last. Could she really go through with this? Could she pull the trigger? "I'm not a killer," she muttered under her breath, more to herself than to Marcus. She needed reassurance, but there was none to be found. The only thing left was a cold, brutal reality that she had no choice but to face. They arrived at an inconspicuous building on the outskirts of town, a rundown office tucked between two larger buildings. The building didn't stand out, which was probably the point. The less attention, the better. Sam's pulse quickened as they approached the entrance. Marcus turned to her. "We stick to the plan. We find Wells, get the job done, and then we leave. Quick and clean. Nothing complicated." "Clean," Sam repeated, the word tasting bitter in her mouth. It seemed impossible. There was no way this could be clean. The door creaked open as they entered the building. Inside, the space was poorly lit, with peeling wallpaper and stale air. The floor was littered with dust, as though it hadn't been swept in years. A woman sat behind a desk in the far corner, her eyes hard as she looked up at them. She was young, maybe in her late 20s, but the way she carried herself made it clear she had seen more than anyone her age should have. "Sam," she said, her voice cold. "Marcus. You're here for Wells, right?" Sam nodded, her throat tight. "Yeah. We need to find him." The woman didn't speak for a moment, as if considering the request. Then, without another word, she rose and walked to the back of the room, disappearing into the shadows. Sam exchanged a glance with Marcus, both of them on edge, their bodies tense, waiting for the next move. After what felt like an eternity, the woman returned, leading them down a narrow hallway. The walls were covered in faded, yellowing photos, and Sam could feel the oppressive air getting thicker with each step. At the end of the hall, they stopped in front of a door. The woman knocked once, then opened it without waiting for a response. Inside, a man sat behind a desk, his back to them. The faint glow of a computer screen illuminated his face, casting an eerie light over his features. He looked up slowly as they entered. "Ah, the new recruits," he said, his voice smooth but carrying an unmistakable edge. "I've been expecting you." Sam's stomach churned at the sight of Dominic Wells. He looked exactly how she had imagined, arrogant, entitled, and dangerous. His sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes gave him an almost predatory look, like he was always calculating his next move. "You must be Wells," Marcus said, stepping forward confidently. Wells didn't stand, but his eyes glinted with interest. "That's right. So, what can I do for you two?" Sam's nerves were on fire, her body ready to spring into action, but she held her ground. She had come this far. There was no turning back now. "We're here for the job," Marcus said, his tone steady. "You know what we came for." Wells leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping against the surface of his desk. "Oh, I know what you're here for. But before we go any further, I need to know you can actually do the job. You don't just get to waltz in and expect things to go smoothly. So, prove it." Sam's heart skipped a beat. "Prove it? How?" Wells smiled, a cold, calculating smile that made Sam's skin crawl. "I want to see you make a decision. I want to see if you've got the guts to actually go through with it. There's a complication, you could say. A rival of mine who's been trying to disrupt my operations." Sam felt her stomach tighten. This was it. She was going to have to make a choice, and there was no guarantee that she'd come out of this clean. What if this was it? What if she couldn't walk away? "We'll handle it," Marcus said, his voice grim. Wells gave a small nod, almost as if he were testing them. "I'll give you a name. Deal with him, and the job will be yours. Get it done, and we'll have the information you need about your sister." Sam's hands shook, but she forced herself to nod. She had no other choice. The moment they walked into this, they had committed to a path with no exit signs. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The air inside the dim office felt thicker now. Sam's pulse quickened with every passing second, her heart hammering against her ribcage. Dominic Wells had given them the name, but the real test had only just begun. The decision she had to make was looming over her, heavy and suffocating. She glanced at Marcus, whose stoic expression seemed to be hiding the same turmoil she felt. His face was unreadable, but she could see the tightness in his jaw, the way his shoulders were drawn, as if he too was grappling with the weight of what they were about to do. The name Wells had given them echoed in her mind like a death sentence. "Luke Carter," Wells had said, tossing the name like it was nothing. "Get rid of him. No questions asked. I don't care how it's done, just make sure it's done." Luke Carter. Another name in a long list of people caught in the violent, dangerous web they had just entered. A man who had crossed Wells, and now, he had to pay the price. Sam could feel her stomach turning, nausea rising as the gravity of the situation pressed down on her. She was standing at the edge of a cliff, one wrong move, and everything she had known would be lost. And for what? To find her sister. Was this the price she had to pay? "We'll take care of it," Marcus said, his voice steady. He looked over at Sam briefly, his gaze soft, but the weight of his words made her feel small. It wasn't just a job. It was a life. Sam had never imagined she would be here, at this point, facing the possibility of murder. But as the man who had threatened her sister's life, her world, sat across from her, her mind raced. Wells observed them both closely, a calculating glint in his eyes. His expression was businesslike, as if they were discussing nothing more than a casual errand. For him, this was just another task. For Sam, it was a nightmare. "Do we have a deal?" Wells asked, his fingers steepled in front of him. Sam didn't answer immediately. Her mind was a mess of conflicting thoughts, emotions crashing against her. She wanted to scream, to demand something better, something less monstrous. But what would that change? She had promised to save her sister. This was her chance. If she could do this, then maybe Jasmine would be safe. Maybe it would all be worth it. "Fine," Sam said, her voice tight with resolve. She wasn't sure who she was trying to convince, Wells, Marcus, or herself. "We'll do it." Wells' lips curled into a slow, smug smile. "Good. You've got 48 hours. With that, he turned his attention back to his computer, dismissing them as if they were nothing more than a fleeting inconvenience. Sam stood there for a moment longer, her heart still racing, before Marcus placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Let's go," he said softly. There was no time for hesitation now. The drive to the location was a blur of city lights and silent tension. Sam kept her eyes fixed on the passing streets, trying to keep the whirlwind of thoughts in her mind at bay. Marcus was focused on the road, his expression grim, the weight of the task hanging between them. "I can't believe we're doing this," Sam said quietly after a while, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "You don't have to believe it," Marcus replied, his voice low. "But we're in it now. There's no turning back." Sam's fingers clenched around the seatbelt, the metal biting into her skin as the truth settled in. She had made a decision, a terrible decision. But was there any other way? Could she have walked away? Could she have found another way to get to Jasmine? She glanced over at Marcus, who was still focused on the road. He wasn't one to speak much, especially when things got serious. His silence spoke volumes. He was just as conflicted as she was. Maybe more. "I never thought it would come to this," Sam whispered, mostly to herself. "That I'd be here, doing this. Killing someone, because of her." She barely could finish the sentence. Marcus finally looked over at her. His eyes were dark, but there was understanding in them. He didn't speak right away, but when he did, it was with a quiet intensity. "No one starts out thinking they're capable of something like this. But sometimes, life doesn't give us the choices we want. You're doing what you need to do to save your sister. You've always known what matters most." Sam swallowed hard, his words doing little to ease the storm brewing inside her. But she knew he was right. No matter how ugly, how wrong it felt, she was doing this for Jasmine. The end justified the means. Or so she told herself. The car slowed as they approached the rundown building. The kind of place where people who didn't want to be found went to hide. A place like this was exactly where someone like Luke Carter would lay low. Sam could already feel the heaviness of the decision weighing on her, even as they parked in the shadows. Marcus turned the engine off. They sat there for a moment in silence, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. "This is it," Marcus finally said. "Once we go in, there's no backing out." Sam nodded, trying to steady her breath. This was real now. She wasn't just playing pretend anymore. This was no longer a distant idea. This was life and death. "We do this quickly," she said, her voice steady now, her resolve hardening like iron. "In and out. We find him, and we do the job." Marcus didn't argue. He simply nodded and opened his door, the sound of it breaking the silence that had surrounded them. They walked toward the building, their steps synchronized, each of them caught in their own thoughts. Sam's heart pounded louder with every step she took, but she knew there was no turning back. She had made her choice. Now, she had to live with it. Inside, the building was eerily quiet. The air was thick with the smell of mildew, and the walls were coated with grime. The faint glow of a single bulb flickered overhead, casting long, jagged shadows along the cracked concrete floors. Sam's eyes scanned the surroundings, her breath shallow. "Stay close," Marcus murmured, his voice barely audible in the oppressive silence. They moved carefully, every step measured. They knew what they had come here for. They knew what needed to be done. In the back of the building, behind a thick metal door, they found him. Luke Carter. His figure was slumped in a chair, his face half hidden by the shadows. He looked up slowly as they approached, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "What the hell do you want?" he grumbled, his voice thick with annoyance. He had the air of a man who knew how dangerous the world he inhabited was, but he hadn't expected these two. Sam's hand hovered over her sidearm, her fingers cold and trembling, but she forced herself to stay focused. This was the moment that would change everything. "We're here to take care of business," Marcus said flatly. Carter's eyes flicked between them, his expression shifting from confusion to realization. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said quickly, but Sam saw the panic creeping into his eyes. Marcus didn't give him the chance to explain. Without hesitation, he moved forward, blocking Carter's escape. Sam felt the familiar pressure build in her chest. It was now or never. "Sorry," Marcus muttered, his hand moving swiftly. Before Sam could stop him, the job was done. The cold night air hit Sam's face as they stepped back into the alleyway, the distant hum of city traffic barely noticeable in the aftermath of what had just transpired. The stench of blood lingered in her nostrils, and the weight of what she had just witnessed felt like a stone lodged in her chest. She didn't know if it was the adrenaline or the guilt that made her feel so sick. All she knew was that the world had just changed. The dim light from a nearby street lamp cast long shadows as they walked silently, the distant echoes of their footsteps ringing in the empty street. She was grateful for the silence, for the way it shielded her from the questions she didn't have answers to. She felt numb, like she had just stepped out of her own skin. Marcus didn't speak, but she could feel his eyes on her, his concern pressing against her like an invisible weight. He had done it. He had made the move, ending Luke Carter's life with a quiet, efficient finality. Sam had only stood there, frozen, her hands trembling, but she hadn't stopped him. The man was dead. They hadn't even made it back to the car before Marcus spoke, breaking the heavy silence that had settled over them like a shroud. His voice was low, almost careful, as if treading around something fragile. "You did what you had to do." Sam's head snapped toward him, her eyes wide, her chest tightening. "What I had to do," she repeated, her voice shaking. You mean we just killed him? We just ended a life." "For what?" "For her," Marcus answered, his voice softer now. "For Jasmine. You did it for her." Sam felt the truth of those words, but they didn't make the guilt go away. If anything, it made it worse. The more she tried to justify it, the heavier the burden became. There was no clean way out of this. "I didn't ask for this," she muttered, her voice cracking. "I never wanted to be here." Marcus didn't respond right away. Instead, he walked in silence, the faint crunch of his boots on the gravel filling the space between them. He understood the weight of her words, he was carrying it too. Sam had seen that look in his eyes before, one of regret, of trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. "I know," he finally said. But sometimes, life doesn't give us the luxury of choice. Sam swallowed hard, forcing back the emotions threatening to spill over. She wasn't sure who she was trying to fool, the world, Marcus, or herself. But she couldn't ignore what they had done. They had killed a man. A part of her felt like it was dying along with him. They reached the car without another word. The door creaked open, and Sam slid into the passenger seat, her hands shaking as she fastened her seatbelt. The cool leather beneath her fingers felt foreign, like she was trapped in someone else's life. Marcus started the engine, and the car roared to life, its headlights cutting through the darkness ahead. They drove in silence, both of them lost in their thoughts. Sam's mind kept drifting back to the moment she had stood there, watching Marcus carry out the task with cold precision. There had been no hesitation in his movements, no remorse in his eyes. But he wasn't the one who had to live with the consequences. He wasn't the one who had promised to never cross that line. When they reached the edge of town, Marcus finally broke the silence. "Wells is going to be expecting a report," he said, his voice calm but with a hint of tension. "We'll need to get it done, make sure everything's clean. We've got no choice but to keep moving forward." Sam nodded slowly, the words sinking in like a stone. This was what she had gotten herself into. There was no turning back now. Hours later, Sam found herself standing in front of the same cold, metal door she had passed through earlier. Her heart was still pounding, her breath shallow, but she pushed the fear down and forced herself to walk forward. Marcus was beside her, as always, silent and resolute. The woman from earlier, Alina, was waiting for them inside. She didn't look up when they entered, her gaze fixed on the computer screen in front of her. Sam could tell she was used to this. Used to people like them, doing the dirty work. Alina looked up after a moment, her eyes scanning them both before she spoke. "Did you take care of Carter?" Sam's throat went dry, but she managed to nod. "It's done." Alina didn't flinch, didn't blink. She just stood up from behind her desk and moved toward the file cabinet. She opened one of the drawers and pulled out a manila folder. She handed it to Marcus without a word, then returned to her desk, resuming her previous task as though nothing had happened. Marcus took the folder from her, his face impassive as he flipped it open. "What's this?" he asked. "Information on Wells' next move," Alina replied, her voice as flat as her demeanor. "He'll want you to get started on the next job. There's no rest in this world, not for people like us." Sam felt a chill creep up her spine. She could hear the faint sounds of traffic in the background, the low hum of city life going on outside, but it felt like she was trapped in a different world now, one where death was an ever-present companion. "We'll need to move fast," Marcus said, his voice low and calculated. "Wells won't wait long for results." Alina gave a nod, her eyes flicking between them. "Don't disappoint him. I won't cover for you if you screw this up." Sam didn't say anything. What could she say? She had already crossed a line she thought she would never approach, and now, there was nothing but the path ahead, no way to erase what they had done. Marcus took the file, and they turned to leave. But as they stepped back into the dark hallway, Sam felt a sudden wave of exhaustion wash over her. She wasn't sure how much more of this she could take. It felt like the walls were closing in, like she was suffocating under the weight of all the things she had done, and would continue to do. Outside, the air felt cooler, a welcome change from the stifling tension of the warehouse. Sam breathed deeply, hoping to shake the feeling of dread gnawing at her. But nothing helped. She had done the unthinkable. She had killed someone. And there was no way to go back. The harsh fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Sam sat in the quiet corner of the apartment, staring at the untouched cup of coffee on the table in front of her. It had been hours since they'd returned, yet she still couldn't shake the images from the warehouse, the metallic scent of blood that had clung to the air, and the hollow silence that followed Carter's death. No matter how many times she tried to push the memory aside, it kept resurfacing, a constant reminder of what she had become. The truth was, Sam wasn't sure who she was anymore. She had crossed a line she never thought she'd cross. And now that she had, it felt like there was no going back. The world around her had shifted, and she wasn't sure if she could ever find her footing again. Her mind kept replaying that moment, when Marcus had moved so swiftly, so decisively. The sound of the gunshot, the way Carter's body slumped without a sound. It felt unreal, like something that had happened to someone else. But it was her. It was her own hands that had allowed it to happen. Marcus had said she did what she had to do. But did she? Was this really the only way? Or had they just become pawns in a game far bigger than they ever imagined? The soft sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway, and Sam's head jerked up, her heart racing as she instinctively reached for the gun at her side. But it wasn't Marcus, it was Jasmine. Her younger sister stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with concern. She hadn't changed much in the time Sam had been away, still looking like the same bright-eyed, naive girl who had been caught up in this mess from the beginning. But Sam could see the shift in her expression now, the way her eyes darted nervously between Sam and the empty space around them. "What's wrong?" Jasmine asked, her voice trembling. She stepped into the room cautiously, as though afraid of disturbing something fragile. Sam didn't answer immediately. She couldn't. How could she explain what she had just done? How could she put into words the weight of it all, the fact that she had killed a man to protect Jasmine? To keep her safe. She had promised to save her, but in the process, Sam had sacrificed a part of herself. The pieces were starting to crack, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could hold it all together. "Sam." Jasmine repeated, her voice breaking through the fog of Sam's thoughts. Sam forced herself to look up at her sister, trying to mask the turmoil inside her with a thin smile. "It's nothing," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just tired." Jasmine seemed to buy the explanation, but Sam could tell she wasn't fully convinced. Jasmine had always been intuitive, able to sense when something was wrong. But for now, she didn't push it. "You don't look okay," Jasmine said softly. "Maybe you should rest. You've been through a lot." Sam nodded, but the words felt hollow. Rest. How could she rest? How could she sleep when her mind was filled with blood, with the face of a man she had just killed, with the realization that her own sister was the one who had driven her to this point? "I'm fine," Sam said, more firmly this time, though the words felt like a lie. "Really?" Jasmine didn't seem entirely convinced, but she nodded and stepped back toward the door. "Okay. But if you need me, I'm here." Sam watched her sister leave the room, her footsteps echoing in the quiet apartment. As the door clicked shut behind her, Sam allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She let the mask slip, her shoulders sagging as the weight of everything she had just done crashed down on her. What had she become? The woman who had promised to protect her sister had just taken a life to do so. And yet, it didn't feel like enough. It didn't feel like salvation. It felt like a deep, gnawing emptiness that she wasn't sure how to fill. Hours passed in silence, the only sounds coming from the occasional hum of the refrigerator or the distant clink of dishes in the next room. Sam couldn't bring herself to sleep. How could she? Her mind was too full of the haunting image of Carter, his vacant eyes staring at her even now. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. She stood from the table and walked over to the window, her gaze falling on the city below. The lights were scattered across the skyline, each one representing a different life, a different story. How many people were out there living their lives, oblivious to the darkness Sam had stepped into? She had been one of them once, unaware of what lay beneath the surface. But now, she couldn't escape it. She was tangled in it, and the more she struggled to break free, the deeper she sank. The soft click of the door behind her broke her from her thoughts. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. "Sam," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken words. She didn't respond, not at first. She couldn't bring herself to. What was there to say? What could he possibly say to make this any better? He stepped closer, his figure blocking the faint light coming from the window. I know you're struggling with this. But you did what you had to do. Did I? Sam's voice cracked, her chest tight with unshed tears. Did I really? Or did I just become something I never wanted to be? Marcus didn't respond right away, but she felt his presence beside her, solid and unwavering. Finally, he spoke again, his voice low but comforting. I've been where you are. I've crossed lines I never thought I would. It doesn't get easier. But the thing is, Sam. You're still you. Even if it feels like you're not. Even if it feels like you've lost yourself. You're still the woman who promised to save her sister. That's what matters. Not the things you've had to do to get there. Sam closed her eyes, the weight of his words sinking in. She didn't know if she could ever believe him, but for the first time in hours, a small spark of something, hope, maybe, flickered in her chest. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe this wasn't the end of her. Maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something else. Thank you, she whispered, though she wasn't sure what she was thanking him for. For understanding. For still being there. For giving her a sliver of hope when she felt like everything around her was crumbling. But Marcus didn't need to hear it. He just gave her a small nod and stood there beside her, the quiet presence of someone who understood the cost of survival, of fighting for something that mattered. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Sam let herself breathe. The early morning light filtered through the blinds, casting thin streaks across the floor. Sam sat in the same spot she had been in for hours, barely noticing the passing time as the weight of everything she'd done continued to drag her down. Her thoughts were a blur, like a storm swirling inside her mind, fragmented and too loud to ignore. She glanced toward the small table where Jasmine had left a note earlier, reminding her to rest and take care of herself. But Sam hadn't touched it. How could she rest when she knew what they were up against? How could she pretend everything was normal when everything had changed? The truth gnawed at her, every second stretching longer than the last. Sam had always thought she understood what it meant to be strong, but nothing could have prepared her for the events she had just lived through. How could she protect Jasmine from all this? From this new life, this dark world that seemed to have swallowed them whole? Her phone buzzed, breaking the heavy silence. It was a text from Marcus. Wells wants us to meet, now. Sam didn't hesitate. The last thing she needed was more time to think about what had happened. She needed to keep moving, to focus on something else, anything else. If she could drown out the chaos inside her, maybe she could find a way to survive. The meeting with Wells was held at an old, nondescript warehouse on the edge of town. Sam and Marcus arrived together, their steps synchronized in the way they'd become accustomed to over the past few days. The weight of the unspoken words between them lingered in the air, but neither of them addressed it. It was easier this way. Easier not to talk about the things that were breaking them apart. Wells was already there, standing by the large steel door when they arrived. His presence was imposing, a man whose very being radiated control. His sharp eyes never seemed to miss a thing. Sam hated the way he always made her feel like a puppet, like she was just another tool for his schemes. But she had no choice. They all had their roles to play. Good, Wells said, his voice low and cold as he stepped aside to let them in. You're here. I assume the job is done. Marcus nodded. It's done. Carter won't be a problem anymore. Wells regarded them both, his expression unreadable. Sam couldn't tell if he was satisfied or disappointed. Either way, she didn't care. She had done what she needed to do. For Jasmine. For herself. Good, Wells repeated, a thin smile curving on his lips. But that's just the beginning. There's more to come. Sam's stomach twisted. She hated how Wells made everything feel like a game, like people's lives were nothing more than pieces on a chessboard, easily sacrificed for some larger goal. But that was the life they'd chosen, wasn't it? Or, rather, the life that had been thrust upon them. Wells walked across the warehouse floor to a nearby desk and handed Marcus a folder. Inside here is the next move. You're going to need to be quick, time is running out. We've got enemies on all sides, and I need you to clean up this mess before it escalates. Sam took the folder from Marcus as he glanced over it. It didn't take long for her to recognize the name on the front page. This wasn't just another target. This wasn't a random job. This was someone they knew. Her heart skipped a beat. No, Sam said, her voice barely above a whisper. This can't be right. Marcus looked at her, a sharp warning in his eyes. He knew what she was thinking, and he didn't need to hear it out loud. He didn't want to hear it. Wells narrowed his eyes, clearly sensing the shift in the atmosphere. What's the problem? This name, Sam said, her voice trembling despite her efforts to steady herself. This is someone we know. This is someone from the past. Wells raised an eyebrow but didn't seem surprised. Anne. I can't do it, Sam said, shaking her head, her hands gripping the folder so tightly it felt like it might snap. I can't kill someone we know. This is different. Marcus stepped in, his voice firm. Sam, we don't have a choice. But Sam couldn't listen to him. She couldn't bring herself to look at the folder any longer. It felt like everything she had done, the things she had convinced herself were necessary, had led her to this moment. This was the point of no return. This is who we are now, Marcus continued, his tone cold and controlled. You knew what it would take to keep your sister safe. You knew there would be blood. There's no going back, Sam. She didn't want to hear it. She didn't want to admit that he was right. But deep down, she knew he was. This wasn't just about the job anymore. This was about survival. The world they had entered didn't care about mercy. It didn't care about the lines they drew in the sand. Sam's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, everything around her felt suffocating. She closed her eyes, willing herself to calm down, to think clearly. But when she opened them again, it was no use. She had already crossed that line. She turned away from Marcus and Wells, her hand clutching her stomach as though the act of breathing might make her sick. She needed a moment. A moment to gather herself before she could go through with this next step. Wells' voice interrupted her thoughts. You'll take care of it tonight, he said with finality. No excuses. If you hesitate, you'll regret it. Sam nodded, though the words felt like a lie. She didn't know if she could do this. She didn't know if she could kill someone they knew. But what choice did she have? As Sam and Marcus made their way back to the car, the weight of the situation began to sink in. The tension between them was thick, and Sam couldn't help but feel the distance growing between them, as though they were both standing on different sides of a chasm that couldn't be crossed. Sam, Marcus said, his voice breaking the silence. I know this isn't easy. But we have a job to do. Sam didn't respond right away. She wasn't sure she could. She wasn't sure she could even look him in the eye anymore. Everything had changed. Nothing was simple. She had wanted to save Jasmine, to protect her, but now she wasn't sure she was saving her at all. She was dragging her deeper into this world, and she wasn't sure if she could get out. You don't have to do it alone, Marcus added, his voice softer now. I'm here. Sam finally turned to him, meeting his gaze. The conflict in her eyes was clear. She didn't know if she could keep going. She didn't know if she could keep living with the consequences of what they had done. But she knew one thing, she couldn't stop. Not now. I'll do it, Sam whispered, her voice raw and broken. I'll do it for Jasmine. But as they drove toward the next target, the question loomed heavy in her mind, at what cost? The night was colder than Sam had expected. The city's lights flickered in the distance, casting long shadows across the abandoned alleyway they had parked in. The air smelled faintly of rain, but the storm had yet to come. Sam could feel the tension thick in her chest as she stared at the building before her, the one that housed the name from the file, someone they both knew, someone who had once been part of their world. The car engine hummed softly beneath her, the only sound breaking the otherwise oppressive silence. Sam's fingers curled tightly around the steering wheel, her palms slick with sweat. The name still echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of the truth she didn't want to face. This wasn't just another job. This was personal. Marcus sat beside her, his face unreadable, eyes scanning the building across the street. He had already begun strategizing, mentally preparing for what was about to happen. But Sam couldn't bring herself to focus on the task at hand. Her mind kept returning to the memories of better days, times before everything had gone wrong. She could almost hear their laughter, their plans for the future that never came to fruition. But none of that mattered now. "What's our move?" Sam asked, her voice hoarse. She wasn't sure if she was asking about the job or about the state of her own mind. Either way, the answer was the same, there was no turning back. Marcus turned toward her, his eyes softening just a fraction. He saw the conflict in her, he always did. He had been her partner through everything, and even now, he was trying to protect her. Trying to convince her that this was necessary. "You know what you have to do," he said, his voice steady but firm. "This is the only way to make sure we stay ahead. You can't think about it, Sam. Just, do it." His words felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. Just do it. She had already done things she thought she could never do. But this? This felt different. The person in that building wasn't just some random enemy, they were someone she had once trusted, someone who had been there when things had still been simple. But nothing was simple anymore. Sam turned her gaze back to the building. The window lights flickered inside, but the rest of the place seemed quiet. Too quiet. It was almost as if they were waiting for something. For someone. For her. "I can't do this," Sam whispered, the words escaping her lips before she could stop them. She felt the tremor in her voice, the uncertainty that had taken root deep inside her. Marcus didn't hesitate. His hand reached over, his fingers brushing gently against hers. The contact was brief but meaningful. "Sam, you have to." Her breath hitched in her throat. "This isn't who I am, Marcus." Marcus didn't pull his hand away. Instead, he squeezed it gently, his grip firm enough to ground her, to remind her that she wasn't alone. "It is who you've become, Sam. And it's who you need to be, to survive. We all have our crosses to bear. This is yours." She didn't want to hear it. But it was true, wasn't it? She had crossed a line that she couldn't come back from. And now, there was no choice but to keep moving forward. Sam closed her eyes, exhaling a shaky breath. "For Jasmine," she murmured, the words more to herself than to Marcus. The memory of her sister, the promise she had made to protect her, filled her mind. Marcus didn't speak again, and Sam knew he wouldn't. There were no more comforting words left. She had to make this choice herself. She had to live with it. The building was a maze of empty halls and dim corridors. They moved through it with practiced precision, every step measured and quiet. Sam's senses were on high alert, her mind racing with the possibility of being discovered, but she couldn't shake the feeling of dread that clung to her. When they finally reached the door that had been marked in the file, Sam's heart was pounding in her chest. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had done this before. She had killed before. But this was different. She glanced at Marcus. His face was set, determined. He was ready to finish this. But Sam wasn't sure she ever would be. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked quietly, his voice barely a whisper in the stillness of the hall. "No," Sam replied, her voice hoarse. "But I don't have a choice." He nodded, his expression softening for just a moment before he stepped forward, his hand gripping the door handle. It creaked open with a groan, and they slipped inside, both of them instinctively reaching for their weapons. And there they were, right in front of them. The person they had once known, now standing in front of them, a mix of confusion and fear in their eyes. "Sam," the person said, their voice a sharp gasp of recognition. "What are you doing here?" For a moment, everything froze. Sam's mind went blank. She couldn't speak. She couldn't move. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was here, it felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. "Please," the person begged, taking a step back. "You don't have to do this. You don't understand what's going on." Sam's eyes filled with tears, but she forced herself to stay steady. She couldn't break down now. Not when everything had led to this. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I didn't want this. But I have to." Without waiting for a response, she raised her weapon. Her hand was shaking, her breath quick and shallow. But she couldn't stop. Not now. Before she could pull the trigger, a loud crash echoed from the hallway behind them, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. A group of armed men burst into the room, weapons raised. Marcus reacted first, instinctively shielding Sam with his body. Bullets rang out in quick succession, the room erupting into chaos. Sam ducked behind a nearby crate, her heart hammering in her chest as she realized they had been set up. This wasn't just a simple hit. They had walked right into a trap. "Move!" Marcus shouted, pulling Sam to her feet. They ran, their feet pounding against the concrete floors as they tried to escape the barrage of gunfire. Sam's pulse raced, her mind on overload as she tried to make sense of what was happening. She hadn't just lost her target. She had lost herself. The sounds of gunfire echoed in the distance as Sam and Marcus rushed down the hallway, their breathing heavy and labored. Sam's heart was racing, her thoughts scattered as she tried to process everything that had just happened. They had been ambushed. The plan had failed. And now, they were fighting for their lives. But through the chaos, one thought kept repeating itself in her mind: she couldn't keep running. She couldn't keep hiding from the choices she had made. No matter how fast she ran, they would always catch up with her. And when they did, she wouldn't be able to outrun the price of her loyalty. The adrenaline rush from the ambush left Sam disoriented, her mind a jumbled mess of confusion and regret. She couldn't focus, couldn't make sense of what had just happened. All she knew was that they were still alive. For now. The gunfire had stopped, and the quiet that followed was almost more suffocating than the chaos. They hadn't gotten far. Sam and Marcus had barely made it out of the building before the streetlights gave way to darkness, hiding them from whoever might be pursuing. But that didn't mean they were safe. Sam's heart pounded in her chest, a constant reminder that nothing was ever certain. Sam leaned against the brick wall of a nearby building, her breath coming in short gasps. The reality of what had just happened began to set in. She had failed. She had come so close to taking a life, to crossing the line, and now everything had gone wrong. The person she was supposed to kill, someone she knew, had gotten away, and now, they were on the run. Her gaze shifted to Marcus, who stood a few feet away, scanning the street. His eyes were narrowed, calculating. Always calculating. He was good at it, good at staying one step ahead. But even Marcus wasn't immune to the weight of the situation. She could see it in the way his jaw tightened, the way his hands clenched into fists at his sides. He was angry. They both were. "I'm sorry," Sam murmured, her voice breaking the silence. She didn't know why she said it, maybe because she felt like she owed him some kind of apology, or maybe because the words were the only thing she could say that made any sense in this moment. Marcus didn't turn to look at her right away. He stood there, still, his back to her as he checked their surroundings. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, controlled. "This isn't your fault, Sam." But it was. She knew it was. She had hesitated. She had almost let herself back out of the job, and in doing so, she had put them both in danger. Her hesitation had cost them. She had been afraid to pull the trigger, afraid to end someone's life, even though it was the price of survival. "If I hadn't hesitated," she started, but Marcus interrupted her, his voice sharp. "No, Sam," he said firmly, turning to face her. "You had every right to hesitate. But this was never about hesitation. It's about survival. And sometimes that means making hard choices. We both knew what we were getting into when we decided to play this game." Sam clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. She hated hearing that. She hated the cold truth of it. But it was also the reality. Survival didn't care about right or wrong, it only cared about the end result. And right now, they were still alive. That was all that mattered. "I didn't want this to be our life," Sam whispered, more to herself than to Marcus. "I didn't want any of this. I just wanted to protect Jasmine. I never thought it would come to this." Marcus's gaze softened, but only for a moment. He understood her. He had always understood her. They had been through too much together to pretend they didn't. "I know," he said quietly. "But we're in it now. There's no turning back." Sam didn't respond. She couldn't. She was already too deep in the web they had both woven, and there was no way out. She had tried to protect her sister, to shield her from the darkness that had taken over their lives, but now she wondered if Jasmine would ever be safe. Was there any way to protect her when they were both trapped in this world of violence and lies? Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her spiraling thoughts. She fished it out of her pocket, her hands trembling as she unlocked the screen. It was a message from Jasmine. "Where are you? I'm getting worried." The words hit Sam like a punch to the gut. She had promised Jasmine that she would be there for her, that she would never let anything happen to her. But Sam had already made too many promises she couldn't keep. "We need to go," Marcus said, his voice breaking through her fog of thoughts. "We don't have much time before someone comes looking for us." Sam nodded, stuffing her phone back into her pocket. "Yeah. Let's go." They moved quickly, keeping to the shadows as they made their way toward the safe house. It was a small, nondescript building that had been set up for emergencies like this. They couldn't afford to go to a place they knew, not after the botched job. Someone would be looking for them. They needed to stay one step ahead. The safe house was silent when they arrived, the only sound the creak of the door as it swung open. Sam stepped inside first, her senses on high alert. She half expected someone to be waiting for them, but the place was empty. Sam exhaled in relief, but it was short-lived. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being hunted. That no matter how much she tried to escape, she would always be trapped. "I'll check the perimeter," Marcus said, his voice cool as he slipped into the shadows of the house. Sam barely registered his words. Her mind was still focused on Jasmine, on the message she had sent. Her sister was out there, waiting for her. She had to protect her. Sam couldn't let her be dragged into this world of violence and deceit. But how could she protect her when she wasn't even sure she could protect herself? She sat down on the couch, her hands trembling as she thought about what came next. They had failed. She had failed. But there was no time to wallow in guilt. Not now. The door to the safe house creaked open, and Sam looked up, expecting to see Marcus. But it wasn't him. It was someone else. Her breath caught in her throat as the figure stepped into the dim light. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the face. It was Jasmine. Sam stood frozen in the doorway, her mind unable to process the image in front of her. Jasmine, standing there, alive, but looking as though the weight of the world was pressing down on her. Her eyes were wide, filled with confusion and something else, fear. "Jasmine," Sam whispered, her voice breaking as she took a step toward her sister. "What are you doing here?" Jasmine didn't answer immediately. Instead, she glanced around the room, her gaze flicking over the cluttered space. It was clear that she was just as disoriented as Sam felt. The last thing Sam had wanted was for Jasmine to get caught up in this mess, but there her sister was, standing in the middle of it. I came to find you," Jasmine finally said, her voice trembling. She took a shaky breath, her hands wringing together as she nervously looked between Sam and Marcus, who had stepped into the room behind her. I didn't know where you were, and when I saw the news. I heard what happened. I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. You're my sister. I have to help you." Sam felt a lump form in her throat. Jasmine had never been this involved in the mess Sam had made of her life. She'd always been the one Sam tried to protect, the one she kept at arm's length from the chaos. But now, Jasmine had crossed the line, and there was no turning back. "You shouldn't be here, Jasmine," Sam said, her voice hoarse. "You don't know what you're getting into. This isn't your fight." "But it is." Jasmine insisted, her voice rising with desperation. "It's your fight, and that means it's mine too. You're my family, Sam. I can't just let you go through this alone." Sam shook her head, feeling the weight of her sister's words hit her like a wave. Her heart twisted with guilt. She had tried so hard to shield Jasmine from all of this, but it had never worked. Jasmine was too strong, too determined, and now she was in the middle of it all. "We don't have time for this," Marcus interrupted, his voice sharp as he stepped forward. "We need to move. Now." Sam's gaze snapped to him. His expression was cold, pragmatic. She could see the tension in his face, the way his eyes kept darting to the windows, watching for any signs of movement. But Sam wasn't focused on that right now. She was focused on Jasmine, on the fact that her sister was standing there, putting herself in danger for the sake of a fight that wasn't hers. "Marcus is right," Sam said, her voice a little more forceful now. "We can't stay here long. It's not safe. They'll be looking for us." Jasmine didn't argue. She simply nodded, her face a mix of determination and concern. Sam wanted to pull her into her arms, to tell her everything would be okay, but the truth was, she wasn't sure it would be. Jasmine was already too deep into the mess Sam had created. "We'll find somewhere safe," Sam said, more to reassure herself than her sister. "Just stay close." The hours that followed were a blur. Sam, Marcus, and Jasmine moved swiftly through the night, staying in the shadows, avoiding the main streets, and never staying in one place too long. Sam's mind raced with possibilities, trying to anticipate every move their enemies might make. But every time she thought she had a plan, another complication would arise. It was like trying to navigate through a maze with no clear exit. At one point, they had to abandon their vehicle after a near miss with a patrol, and they were forced to continue on foot. The weight of the night hung heavy on Sam's shoulders. She couldn't stop thinking about Jasmine's safety. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She was supposed to protect her sister, to keep her away from all the violence and danger. But now, there was no safe place. As they made their way through the empty streets, Sam couldn't help but notice how different Jasmine looked. Gone was the wide-eyed innocence, replaced by a quiet resolve. Jasmine wasn't the girl Sam had tried so hard to protect anymore. She was someone else. Someone who had stepped into a world Sam had hoped to shield her from. They reached a small, run-down building in a forgotten part of town, one that Marcus had been using as a temporary hideout. It wasn't much, barely a shelter, but it was safer than being out in the open. Marcus quickly checked the place, ensuring there were no surprises waiting for them, then motioned for them to come inside. Once inside, Sam collapsed onto the couch, the exhaustion hitting her like a freight train. She had never felt so drained in her life. Her body ached, and her mind was screaming with the weight of everything that had happened. Jasmine stood by the door, her arms wrapped around herself as she surveyed the room. Sam watched her, feeling a sense of dread grow in the pit of her stomach. Jasmine didn't belong here. She shouldn't have to live like this. You need to get out of this life, Jasmine, Sam said softly, her voice raw from the tension of the past few hours. You need to go home. I'll figure this out. Jasmine didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned to Sam, her eyes filled with a quiet sadness. You don't get it, do you? She said, her voice low but steady. You think you're protecting me by keeping me away, but all you're doing is pushing me further away from you. I'm not going to stand by and watch you destroy yourself. Sam opened her mouth to argue, but the words caught in her throat. Jasmine was right. She had always thought she was protecting her, but in doing so, she had shut her out. She had kept her sister in the dark, tried to shelter her from the truth, and now Jasmine was right here, in the middle of everything. And no matter how much Sam tried to deny it, her sister was already too deep. I'm not going to let you do this alone, Jasmine continued, her voice firm. I'm not leaving you, Sam. We're in this together. Sam closed her eyes, the fight draining out of her. She had always known this day would come, the day when Jasmine would refuse to stay away. But even now, knowing how dangerous it was, how much was at stake, Sam couldn't bring herself to tell her sister to leave. I just want you to be safe, Sam whispered, her voice cracking. I never wanted this for you. Jasmine crossed the room and knelt beside Sam, taking her hand. Then let me help you, Sam. Let me help you fix this. The air inside the hideout was thick with the tension of unsaid words. Sam sat on the old, worn couch, her mind spinning with a million thoughts, none of them comforting. Marcus had gone to check the building's perimeter again, leaving the two sisters in an uncomfortable silence. Jasmine had insisted on staying with her, not backing down even after everything Sam had tried to do to protect her. Sam wanted to argue, to tell her sister it was too dangerous, but she couldn't. She was too tired, too emotionally drained to fight anymore. And part of her, no matter how foolish it was glad Jasmine had decided to stay. But then another part of her screamed in fear. What if something happened to her? Sam ran a hand through her hair, her gaze drifting to Jasmine, who sat on the floor near the wall, staring at the ground. Jasmine looked lost in thought, her shoulders hunched as though she were carrying the weight of the world, just like Sam. Why didn't you listen to me? Sam finally asked, her voice breaking the silence. Jasmine lifted her eyes, meeting Sam's gaze with an intensity that made Sam's chest tighten. Because you need me, Sam. You always have. And I'm not going to let you go through this alone, no matter what. There it was again. That unshakable loyalty. Sam had always tried to protect Jasmine, to keep her innocent, to give her a life free from the danger that Sam herself had been born into. But no matter how hard she tried, Jasmine was always there, always at the center of everything. You should be with Mom, Sam muttered, her eyes on the ground as she spoke. You should be at home, living a normal life. Not this. Not now. Jasmine shook her head, her voice firm. I don't care about normal, Sam. You and I, we're in this together. We've always been, even when we were kids. You think I can just walk away from you now? After everything we've been through? She paused, her voice softer. I won't leave you. Not when you need me the most. The words cut through Sam like a blade. They were both trapped in this mess, both connected by a bond that was impossible to break. And Sam couldn't help but feel guilty for having dragged Jasmine into it all. If Jasmine had stayed in her life, if Sam hadn't pulled her into this world of lies and danger, maybe she could still have that normal life. But now it was too late. Sam exhaled sharply and stood, pacing the room restlessly. Her mind was still processing everything. The failed mission. The fact that they were still alive. The constant fear of being hunted. The exhaustion that weighed on her like a 1,000-pound anchor. She ran her fingers through her hair again, trying to clear her mind. It wasn't working. Jasmine watched her from the floor, her gaze unwavering, the faintest look of concern in her eyes. Sam knew her sister, knew that she was worried about her, probably just as much as Sam was worried about her. "I never wanted this for you, Jazz," Sam said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "I didn't want this life for you. I didn't want to pull you into this mess." Jasmine slowly stood up and crossed the room to Sam, her movement steady, her expression calm. When she reached Sam, she placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You didn't pull me into anything, Sam. I chose this. I chose to stay by your side." Her words hit Sam harder than anything else. She looked down at her sister's hand on her shoulder, a steady comfort amidst the chaos. Jasmine had chosen this. And somehow, Sam wasn't sure if that made her feel better or worse. "We're family," Jasmine continued, her voice resolute. "We always have been. And I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you make me." Sam swallowed hard, trying to keep the tears at bay. She wanted so badly to pull Jasmine into her arms, to protect her from the world that had been closing in on them both. But that world was too dangerous, and Sam didn't want to drag her sister further into it. Before she could say anything else, the sound of footsteps outside caught their attention. Marcus. He entered the room, his face grim. He looked at both of them, his eyes flickering briefly to Jasmine before he addressed Sam. "We don't have much time. They're closing in." Sam's heart dropped. She had known it wouldn't be long before their enemies found them, but hearing it out loud made the reality all the more terrifying. There was no safe place. There was no way out. They had already burned too many bridges. Jasmine's face paled as she looked between Sam and Marcus. "Who are they? What's going on?" "They're the people who've been hunting us," Marcus replied, his voice cold and businesslike. "The ones we've been trying to outrun. They don't stop. They'll find us, and when they do, it'll be over." The gravity of Marcus' words hit Sam like a punch to the gut. She had known the risks, known the dangers, but hearing them spelled out like that made everything feel so much more real. It was hard to deny it anymore, they were running out of time. "Do you have a plan?" Sam asked, trying to keep her voice steady. She could feel the panic starting to creep in, but she refused to let it take control. "Not yet." Marcus nodded. "We need to move. I've got a contact who can help us. But it's going to be risky. And we'll need to move fast." Sam's pulse quickened. "Risky?" she repeated, glancing at Jasmine. "How risky?" "Risky enough that it's not a guarantee," Marcus said, looking at Sam and then Jasmine. "But it's the best chance we have right now." Sam's mind raced. The weight of the choices ahead of them, the danger closing in, was almost too much to bear. But there was no time to think about what might go wrong. They had no choice but to move forward. It was their only option. "Let's go," Sam said, her voice firm, despite the fear crawling beneath the surface. The escape wasn't easy. It never was. They moved quickly through the dark streets, keeping to the shadows and trying to avoid detection. Sam stayed close to Marcus, who seemed to know exactly where he was going. He had contacts, people who could help them. But each turn, each alley they ducked into, felt like it was leading them deeper into a maze with no clear exit. As they reached an old, decrepit building, Marcus motioned for them to stop. "This is it," he said. "The contact is inside." The door creaked as Marcus pushed it open. The room inside was dimly lit, the air musty with the smell of mildew and old wood. There, standing near the far wall, was a man who Sam didn't recognize. His eyes were cold, his face hidden beneath a hood, but Sam knew instantly that this man could either be their salvation or their doom. Marcus spoke to him in hushed tones, and Sam could feel the weight of the conversation hanging in the air. She didn't like the feeling of being in the dark. But there was no other choice. The man gave a brief nod, then turned to Sam and Jasmine. "You're not safe here," he said simply. "But I can help you. For a price." Sam exchanged a glance with Marcus, whose expression was unreadable. There was always a price. There was always a catch. But right now, they had no other option. How much? Sam asked, her voice low. Not much, the man replied. But the question is, how much are you willing to risk to stay alive? In that moment, Sam realized something. There was no going back. They had already crossed the point of no return. And no matter what, they would have to pay the price. The room was cold, and the air was thick with tension as Sam, Jasmine, and Marcus stood in front of the mysterious man. His features were sharp, his gaze penetrating, but there was something about the way he moved, the way he spoke, that made Sam uneasy. The man's name was Jordan, and he had been one of Marcus's old contacts, someone who could be trusted, or so Marcus had assured them. Jordan was already pulling something out of his jacket pocket, a small, faded map. The edges were worn, and the ink was smudged in places. He spread it out on the table in front of them, his finger tracing a route along the lines. "This is the fastest way out of here," Jordan said, his voice rough, as though he had seen too much of the world's darkness. "But it's not safe. There are patrols, and there are people watching these routes. You'll need to move quickly, and you'll need to be smart." Sam glanced at the map, then up at Jordan. She could feel her stomach tightening. She knew this was no easy escape. It never was. Every escape had a price, and she was already aware that this one would cost them more than they could afford. "What's the catch?" Sam asked, her voice steady, though her heart was pounding. There was always a price, and she was ready for it. Jordan's eyes met hers. He didn't smile, didn't offer any false sense of reassurance. Instead, he slid a thick envelope across the table toward her. Sam picked it up warily, her fingers brushing over the cold, rough paper. "It's not about money," he said, his voice low. "It's about trust. I'm helping you now because I owe Marcus. But you need to understand, once you take this, there's no going back. No one can help you once you're on the other side of that fence." Sam's eyes narrowed, but she didn't hesitate. She opened the envelope and found a series of photographs and documents inside. One photo showed a gated facility, high fences topped with barbed wire. Another was a blurred image of men in black suits, their faces obscured by shadows. "This is a safe house on the other side," Jordan continued. "It's your best shot. But getting there? It's not easy. There's a group inside that will give you shelter, but you'll need to survive the trip to get there." Jasmine stepped forward, her eyes flicking to the pictures. "What exactly are we running from, Jordan? And what happens to us when we get there?" Jordan paused, his face becoming even more serious. "You're not just running from the law, or from some regular enemies. You're running from them," he said, nodding toward the images of the men in black suits. "These people. They don't stop. You think they're going to let you just disappear into a safe house? No. They'll come for you. And they'll keep coming until they get what they want." Sam felt her breath catch in her throat. She had always known that there were forces beyond her control, the ones who had orchestrated the framing, the ones who had turned her life upside down. But hearing it put so plainly made it all the more real. This wasn't just a fight to survive, it was a fight for their very lives. "So, what do we do now?" Jasmine asked, her voice steady despite the fear creeping into her eyes. She was scared, Sam could see that, but Jasmine was also strong. Stronger than Sam had ever given her credit for. Jordan didn't hesitate. "You follow my plan. I've set up a route that avoids the major checkpoints, but it won't be easy. We move fast, we stay low, and we don't make any unnecessary stops. We get to the facility, and we lay low until you're safe. That's the best I can offer." Sam nodded, her mind already working through the details. She didn't have a choice. If this was their best shot, they would take it. "All right," Sam said, her voice hardening with determination. When do we leave? Jordan glanced at his watch. In an hour. Gather what you need, and I'll make sure the coast is clear. As Jordan turned away to check his gear, Sam looked over at Jasmine. Her sister's face was pale, but there was a fire in her eyes that Sam hadn't seen before. It was a look of resolve, the same kind of determination Sam had seen in herself many times. You sure you're ready for this? Sam asked quietly, her voice full of concern. Jasmine gave her a small, wry smile. I've been ready for a while now, Sam. You just didn't know it. Sam's chest tightened as she watched her sister, knowing that this journey would change them both in ways they couldn't possibly understand. But there was no turning back now. They had no other options. Let's get ready, Sam said, her voice firm as she turned toward the corner of the room, grabbing her bag and preparing for the journey ahead. An hour later, they were on the move. The night was dark, the streets empty, as they moved swiftly through the city, staying in the shadows, avoiding the open roads. Jordan led them through alleyways, down narrow streets, and through forgotten parts of the city that Sam hadn't even known existed. The tension in the air was palpable. Every footstep, every sound, felt like it could be the one that gave them away. Jasmine kept close to Sam, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. Sam was hyper-aware of every movement, every creak of the building, every rustle of wind. They weren't safe yet. They wouldn't be until they were far away from this place, and even then, Sam knew that the danger wouldn't stop. As they neared the edge of the city, Jordan stopped them, his hand raised in a signal to be silent. Sam and Jasmine held their breath, waiting, listening. There was nothing but the sound of the wind, the occasional distant siren, the distant hum of traffic. For a moment, it felt like they were in the clear. But then, Sam heard it. The faint sound of footsteps. The unmistakable rhythm of patrols on the prowl. They're coming, Marcus muttered, his voice tense as he turned to Sam. We need to move faster. The reality of their situation hit Sam like a cold wave. They were being hunted. And every moment they spent in the open was another step closer to being caught. We move now, Sam said, her voice sharp with urgency. She didn't need to say anything more. Jasmine nodded, her jaw clenched in determination, and the three of them took off, running through the dark streets, hearts pounding in unison. The air outside was biting, the chill of the night seeping into their bones as they sprinted through the shadowed streets. Sam felt her heart pounding in her chest, each beat like a countdown to something she couldn't quite name but knew was inevitable. They were moving fast, not daring to speak or even slow their pace. The sound of their footsteps echoed on the concrete, too loud in the stillness of the night. Jasmine was beside her, her breath coming in short gasps. She kept up, never faltering, but Sam could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her sister as much as it was on her. Every step felt like a gamble, a fragile thread between life and death. Marcus was ahead, his movements swift and purposeful. He was the one with the experience, the one who knew how to survive in a world like this. But Sam couldn't shake the feeling that they were running towards something much worse than what they were leaving behind. Keep going, Marcus muttered as they reached an intersection, glancing over his shoulder. Don't stop. We've got about 20 minutes before they realize we've slipped past them. We need to hit the safe house before they start looking for us. Sam nodded, adrenaline making her move faster. They couldn't stop now. Not after everything they'd been through. Not with so little time left. The city seemed like a ghost town in the dead of night, the streets empty except for the occasional passing car. But Sam knew better than to let the silence lull her into a false sense of security. They had made it this far, but the real danger was still ahead. It was in the corners they couldn't see, in the places where they couldn't hear the footsteps coming until it was too late. They moved like shadows, darting down alleyways and through narrow side streets, their eyes always scanning for any sign of danger. The night seemed to stretch on forever, the dark sky pressing down on them as they moved deeper into the unknown. Are we close? Sam asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus glanced back, his face tense but determined. Almost there. Just keep your heads down. They turned a corner, and Sam could see the outline of the building ahead. It was old, worn down, the kind of place that had seen better days but still stood strong, holding its secrets within its crumbling walls. This was the safe house. But as they neared the entrance, Sam's heart dropped. There was movement. Figures standing at the door. Ambush, Marcus hissed. Stay low. They crouched behind a dumpster, holding their breath, hoping they wouldn't be seen. Sam's mind raced. They couldn't afford to be caught now. Not when they were so close. Who are they? Jasmine whispered, her voice tight with fear. Not sure, Marcus muttered, his eyes narrowing. But it doesn't matter. We need to move. Now. He gestured for them to follow him, and they ducked into a side alley, trying to stay hidden from the figures ahead. Sam's pulse raced in her ears, and for a moment, she felt the panic rising in her throat. But she pushed it down, focusing instead on the task at hand. Survival. The alleyway was narrow, the walls close on either side, but it provided some cover. They moved quickly, silently, as if the very act of breathing could betray them. Sam's legs ached with the effort of running, but there was no time to slow down. There was no time to feel anything other than the drive to survive. As they reached the end of the alley, Marcus paused, signaling for them to stop. He turned to Sam, his eyes hard with determination. We have one shot at this, he said quietly. When I say go, we run. Straight for the back entrance. Keep low, and don't look back. You understand? Sam nodded, her breath steady despite the rapid pounding of her heart. Understood. Marcus's hand tightened on his weapon, and he gave a small nod. Go. They bolted out of the alley, sprinting toward the back of the building, staying as low as possible. Sam's lungs burned with each breath, but she pushed through, her focus entirely on reaching that door. Behind them, Sam could hear the faint sounds of footsteps following, growing louder with each passing second. They weren't alone. They never were. But they couldn't afford to stop now. Not when they were so close. As they neared the back entrance, Marcus reached for the door handle, and to Sam's relief, it opened with a creak. They slipped inside, just as the sounds of pursuit grew louder. They were in. The inside of the building was cold, the floor creaking under their feet as they moved through the narrow hallway. Sam's eyes adjusted to the darkness, and she saw Marcus gesture for them to follow him. This way, he whispered, leading them deeper into the building. The air was musty, the walls lined with old posters and faded graffiti. It felt like they had stepped into another world, one that was far removed from the chaos and danger of the outside streets. But the danger wasn't gone. Not by a long shot. They reached a small room at the back of the building, a windowless space with only a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Jordan was waiting for them, his face hidden in shadow. He stood in front of a table, and on it were several items that Sam recognized from their earlier conversation, a stack of papers, maps, and a small, old radio. Close the door, Jordan ordered in a low voice. We need to move fast. They'll be looking for you within minutes. You don't have much time. Sam and Marcus exchanged a look before Sam closed the door behind them. The room fell into an eerie silence, broken only by the soft hum of the radio. Jordan didn't waste any time, reaching for the stack of papers. Here's the plan, he said, his voice cold and efficient. You'll have a few hours before they start closing in. We've got a window for you to make it to the border. You'll need to stay out of sight until then. Use the back roads, avoid the main highways. They'll be looking for you everywhere. Got it, Marcus said, his tone grim. Sam felt the weight of his words settle over her like a heavy blanket. It was clear that they weren't just running from the law anymore. They were running from something much darker, something that had been hunting them from the beginning. And no matter how hard they tried to escape, it felt like the net was closing in around them, tightening with every step. "We'll keep moving until we can't anymore," Sam said, her voice resolute. "Let's just hope we make it through this." Jasmine nodded beside her, her face set with determination. "We have to make it." And with that, they all knew the truth: the road ahead would be long, dangerous, and uncertain. But there was no turning back now. They had come this far, and they weren't about to stop. Not when they were so close to freedom. Not when the price of survival was becoming clearer by the second. The road to the border was cracked and forgotten, an old stretch of asphalt barely clinging to its place between overgrown fields and collapsing fences. It hadn't seen regular traffic in years, which made it the perfect route for fugitives. Sam gripped the steering wheel of the rusted-out pickup truck Jordan had arranged for them. The vehicle wheezed with every gear shift, the engine protesting with each mile. Jasmine sat in the passenger seat, clutching a map in her lap, while Marcus rode in the back, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. They were almost there. And yet, Sam's chest felt tighter with every passing mile. They weren't being chased, not yet, but the silence didn't feel like safety. It felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to snap. "We're about 20 minutes out," Jasmine murmured, tapping the map. "Once we hit the old toll booth," Jordan said, "the checkpoint's about a mile down the road." Marcus leaned forward between the seats. "That's where we need to be careful. They'll be watching for anything out of place." Sam nodded. She had barely slept in 2 days. Her body was aching, her eyes dry and burning. But the thought of stopping, of letting her guard down even for a second, made her skin crawl. Everything hinged on the next few hours. The plan was simple: reach the border, meet the contact, get across with forged papers. After that, they'd disappear into a new life, under new names, far from the people who had ruined theirs. But there was still one truth Sam hadn't shared. One weight still crushing her chest like a stone. And it was time. As the truck rattled down the deserted road, she glanced at her sister. Jasmine looked pale but determined. There was a strength in her now that hadn't been there before. "Jazz," Sam said quietly, her voice catching slightly in her throat. Jasmine turned, her brows furrowed. "Yeah. There's something I need to tell you. Before we cross." Marcus looked up too, sensing the shift in energy. The truck hummed along, the tires cracking over stray gravel as the tension thickened inside the cab. "I didn't take the fall because I thought it was right," Sam began, her eyes locked on the road. "I did it because I knew no one would believe the truth. You weren't supposed to be anywhere near that party that night. And when I found out what happened, I panicked." Jasmine blinked. "Sam, I told you." "I don't." "I know you don't remember," Sam cut in. "Or maybe you do and you just don't want to. But I was there. I saw you leave the room. I saw the look on your face. You were scared. You'd been set up just like me, but I was the one who already had a record. I was the one they expected to mess up." The truck swerved slightly as Sam's voice trembled. "You were high. You didn't mean to hurt anyone, Jazz. You didn't even know what you were doing. But I did. I knew what they'd do to you if they found out. So I said it was me. I let them lock me up because I couldn't let them destroy you." Silence. Jasmine stared at her sister, eyes wide and unblinking. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but no words came out. Finally, she whispered, "I thought I remembered it wrong. I thought I'd made it all up." Sam nodded slowly. "You didn't. But I didn't tell you because I didn't want you carrying that weight. I thought, maybe it'd be easier if you believed the story they told." Jasmine turned away, her hand covering her mouth as tears welled in her eyes. "But the truth always comes back, doesn't it?" she said quietly. "No matter how deep you bury it." Marcus broke the silence. "We're here." The truck slowed as the ruined toll booth came into view. The booth itself was covered in rust and graffiti, but about 50 yards beyond it, the real threat loomed, a makeshift checkpoint built out of sandbags and steel. 2 black SUVs were parked on either side. Men in body armor stood holding rifles, their faces hidden behind dark sunglasses. Sam pulled the truck to a stop behind a cluster of old trees, just out of view. Jasmine wiped her eyes quickly. Do we even know if this guy's going to show? He'll be here, Marcus said. He doesn't miss rendezvous. They waited. The seconds dragged on, stretched by tension and fear. Finally, another car appeared from the north, an old black sedan, dust-covered and slow. It parked just shy of the checkpoint. A tall man stepped out, dressed in plain clothes. He raised one hand in a casual signal. That's him, Marcus said. Sam took a deep breath and reached under the seat for the documents Jordan had given them. Fake IDs. Stamped papers. Just enough to get them across if no one looked too hard. But they couldn't afford a mistake. As they climbed out of the truck, Jasmine touched Sam's arm. You know I don't blame you, right? She said softly. Sam looked at her, her heart in her throat. I never have, Jasmine continued. But I'm ready now. If this is what it takes to be free, really free, I'm not hiding anymore. From anyone. Or anything. Sam nodded, tears burning behind her eyes. Then let's finish this. They approached the contact, every muscle in their bodies on edge. The man handed them a small folder, nodded once, and gestured toward the checkpoint. Showtime. They walked, slow but confident, to the guards. Marcus took the lead, papers in hand. The guards barely glanced at him before waving him through. Then Sam stepped forward. The guard looked down at her papers, then back up at her face. He paused. Something in his posture shifted. Sam's heart dropped. What's your name? The guard asked. Sarah Jennings, she replied smoothly. Her voice didn't shake, but inside, panic threatened to rise. The guard looked at the paper again. You sure? She's with me, Marcus said quickly, stepping back toward them. The guard studied Sam one more time, then slowly handed the paper back. All right. You're clear. Sam exhaled silently, her knees nearly buckling as she crossed the invisible line. Jasmine followed behind her, holding tight to the documents, never looking back. They had made it. At least, this part. They were over the border now. But freedom? That was still ahead. The morning after they crossed the border was quiet. Too quiet. Sam awoke in a small, bare room above an old hardware store. The bed was lumpy, the window cracked slightly open, and a single beam of sunlight cut through the dusty air. For a moment, she lay still, listening, feeling. Not just the physical ache in her body, but something deeper. A strange, unfamiliar sense of stillness. It was the first time in years she hadn't felt hunted. But peace was not the same as freedom. Downstairs, she found Marcus sipping black coffee, eyes trained on a grainy television showing static. Jasmine was by the window, watching the street with quiet intensity. They haven't followed, Marcus said without turning. At least not yet. Jasmine turned. But they will. Sam nodded. Yeah. They always do. They were safe, on paper. New identities, new location, new life. But the kind of people who had orchestrated everything they'd run from didn't stop just because of a border. They didn't stop because things were right or wrong. They stopped when you had nothing left to take. Sam sat down at the table, her mind spinning with everything they had lost, and everything they still had to face. Let's say they don't find us for a while, Marcus said slowly. What's next for you two? It was a simple question. But Sam didn't have a simple answer. She glanced at Jasmine. Jasmine exhaled, brushing a hand through her curls. I want to speak up, she said. Maybe not publicly. Not yet. But I can't pretend anymore. What happened to you, Sam? It was wrong. You took my fall. I know you did it out of love, but I need to start carrying some of the weight. Sam looked at her sister, something heavy rising in her chest. Jazz. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because I believed you deserved a second chance. I know, Jasmine said. But you deserve one too. A silence settled between them. And then, Sam smiled. A real smile. The kind she hadn't worn in years. I've been thinking, she said. There are probably hundreds of women like me. People who took the fall. People who got caught in a system that didn't care about truth, just about closing a case. You want to fight back? Marcus asked. Sam nodded slowly. Yeah. I do. Maybe not like before. I'm not going to run into courtrooms with files and yell conspiracy. But I know the law now. I know the cracks they hide behind. I've lived it. Jasmine's eyes lit up. You want to help people. Like, real help. Real stories, Sam said. Real change. One voice at a time. Marcus chuckled, the first laugh Sam had heard from him in weeks. You two are gonna get us all killed again. Maybe, Sam smirked. But we'll go down doing something that matters. They packed what little they had, kept it light. The plan was never to stay in one place long. Too risky. But that didn't mean they had to live like ghosts. Sam had decided that morning, she was done hiding. She would live with the truth, even if the world still couldn't face it. Later that night, while Jasmine slept and Marcus stood guard on the roof, Sam opened her laptop. A blank document stared back at her. She hesitated, then typed the first line. My name is Samantha Green. I was wrongfully convicted for a crime my twin sister committed. I don't tell this story for revenge. I tell it for the women like me who are still waiting for someone to believe them. She paused. Then she added. If you're reading this, you're not alone anymore. She hit save. By the end of their long journey, through betrayal, guilt, identity, and redemption, Sam and Jasmine emerge not as broken fugitives, but as women who've claimed their truth. Sam, once seen as just the bad twin, now finds strength in her experience. Her pain, her injustice, it will not be wasted. She chooses to turn it into purpose. Jasmine, who carried the silent burden of guilt and denial, finally steps into the light, owning what happened, and standing by her sister not just in blood, but in truth. And Marcus, the stoic protector, finds something like peace watching them grow into their power. Their escape was just the beginning. What they do now, how they live with the truth, is the real story. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?